Chapter 176. Yi Fan could clearly hear his bones cracking. His body was almost deformed as he suffered unimaginable damage. Plop. After falling into the mountain stream, he was in a state of half-consciousness, and drowsiness. The mountain stream, waterfall, and spring water converged to form a river that flowed under the beautiful mountain range. Yi Fan floated up and down, moving with the waves as he was swept into the distance. This river was not very rapid. It would most likely enter the plains in the future and converge into a surging river. Yi Fan would occasionally wake up, but he did not have any strength. He felt as if his bones were broken in at least a dozen places as he floated in this wide river. One had to know that his physical body was comparable to a heavy treasure, yet he was still injured to this extent. One could imagine how terrifying it was at that time. After drifting for 3 whole days, Yi Fan's consciousness gradually recovered. He immediately grimaced as he felt intense pain in many places. At this time, the river had calmed down. There was a dock not far away with many boats. There was a city on the riverbank. Bang! He was washed to the dock and crashed into a large boat. Someone immediately discovered him. Damn, so unlucky. Being hit by a dead person, no luck for the whole year. The people on the boat cursed. Not dead, he seems to still be breathing. Bring him up and let's see. Someone went into the water and hurriedly brought Yi Fan onto the boat. Could it be an expert of the cultivation world? The bosun was shocked and said, could it be that he is heavily injured and has fallen into the river? He stretched out his hand towards Yi Fan's sea of reincarnation. He quickly stood up and cursed, a piece of trash, there are no fluctuations of divine power. The others gathered around and observed Yi Fan while discussing. Disfigured face, crooked mouth, slanted eyes, 1 leg long and 1 leg short. His body is also deformed. I have never seen such an ugly person. This ugly monster is clutching a woman's bra in his hand and refuses to let go. Could it be that he wants to commit suicide for love? This bra is really beautiful. It is a bit humiliating for him to hold it in his hand. I say, old Li San, don't tell me you still want her? Such an ugly guy, the girl he likes can't be any better. Be careful of nightmares. Some of the people on the pier were discussing among themselves. Yi Fan quickly understood. The void had shattered, and his physical body had suffered serious damage. It was completely deformed, and if he wanted to recover, he needed to reconnect his bones. Right now, he really did look like an ugly monster. How should we deal with him? It seems like he can be revived. Leave it at the dock and let it fend for itself. Consider it as us doing a good deed. The shipowner circled around Yi Fan and said, we can't save him for nothing. Isn't the Kuai-hua gang in the city recruiting people everywhere? If we sell him there, it can be considered as helping him make a living. The Kuai-hua gang is looking for people everywhere. What are they trying to do? The person next to him asked. Rumor has it that a major force is recruiting people to go to the northern region to dig for source chi. Heavens, the northern region. Mortals can't reach it even if they walk for 10 lifetimes. How can they go? Cultivators have the means of immortals and can cross the void. Although we can't reach there, it is not difficult for them. Yi Fan wanted to stand up and leave, but when he heard their words, his heart suddenly moved and he didn't get up. Ugly, are you okay? The shipowner lowered his body and asked. I'm fine. I just need to rest for a few days. Yi Fan naturally had to cooperate. Hearing this, the shipowner was very satisfied and said, get him something to eat and then send it to the Kuai-hua gang. The Kuai-hua gang was only a small sect, not even comparable to the Spirit Void Wonderland, but in such a city, it was a giant. This area was close to the Yaoguang Holy Land, and all the sects were affiliated with it. The Kuai-hua gang's status was far from enough. It was the lowest sect, controlled by the sects that were affiliated with the Yaoguang Holy Land. Why are you sending everyone here? We need strong labor, not disabled people like this. After seeing Yi Fan's appearance, the Kuai-hua gang was very dissatisfied. He is very strong, definitely not disabled. If you don't believe me, let him carry a rock. The shipowner smiled apologetically. Yi Fan cooperated and lifted a large rock. He walked a few steps before throwing it on the ground. Just like that, he was left behind. 5 days later, the Kuaihua gang sent him and hundreds of people to a sect called Jade Mirage. Check carefully, don't let cultivators sneak in. We are bringing people to dig for source, not to help people cross the void. If something goes wrong, no one can bear the responsibility. The Jade Mirage was affiliated with the Yaoguang Holy Land and served it. An old man held a jade needle in his hand and placed Yi Fan and the others in front of the mountain. Rays of jade light shot out and pierced the people's sea of reincarnation. Very good, no divine power. The old man nodded in satisfaction. However, it did not end there. Next, more than a dozen old men came forward and checked carefully more than a dozen times before letting the hundreds of people pass. This was selecting people for the Yaoguang Holy Land, so they naturally did not dare to be careless. In these few days, Yi Fan learned a lot of information. The appearance of the exceptional source of God in the northern region had alarmed the eastern barren territory. Many great forces could not wait and came to the northern lands to support their own representatives to open source mines in the area where the source of God had been discovered. Countless years ago, various holy lands and clans of the clan of the ancients had entered the northern region and had their own source mines. This time, the origin ancient mine was not peaceful, and the source of God had appeared in other places, which made them pay more attention. Source was extremely mysterious. It was formed before the primordial age and could even be traced back to the beginning of the world. It was buried under the earth. It was difficult for cultivators to find it because it was wrapped in a strange, stone skin. Even cultivators could not see through this kind of stone skin. Only by mining it could one determine whether or not there was a source. It was like the jadeite on the other side of the starry sky. When it was wrapped in old skin, all kinds of sophisticated instruments could not detect it. Only by cutting it open could one know if there was a green. Moreover, there would sometimes be all kinds of evil things when mining source. For example, mysterious creatures that had been sleeping for a long time would come out, or fiendish energy from before the ancient underworld would leak out. Thus, very few cultivators would personally mine source. Even though these ordinary people knew that they were going to the northern region to mine source and that it was not safe, they could not resist the temptation of gold. Yi Fan's sea of reincarnation had been sealed and his divine power had dried up. If he stayed in this area, there would be no way out. He decided to take a risk and use this chance to go to the northern region. At present, many bones in his body were deformed, including his cheekbones and jaw. It could be said that he was completely disfigured. His left calf was broken into 3 pieces. It looked like his left leg was a bit short, and the other parts were the same. His body was almost deformed. His life force was really strong. In just 5 or 6 days, his broken bones had already healed. However, because it was not corrected, after the bones were reconnected, the shape was not right. He looked ugly no matter how one looked at it. Yi Fan purposely looked like this. He could only reconnect the bones when he reached the northern region. He needed this kind of appearance now. After staying at the Jade Void Gate for 7 or 8 days, they checked again and again. After confirming that there were no mistakes, they sent Yi Fan and the others to the Yaoguang sacred land. From far away, the people of the Jade Void Gate descended from the clouds and walked forward with hundreds of people. Yi Fan was very surprised. In front of him, there were clouds and rosy clouds. Many mountains were floating in the sky and not on the ground. Each mountain was majestic. Some were surrounded by demonic clouds, and some were surrounded by colorful mist. It was as if they had existed since the beginning of the world and emitted the aura of the ancient underworld. A group of country bumpkins who have never seen the world. A young cultivator mocked. In fact, he was also very shocked. He said, "This is just a corner of the Yaoguang sacred land. In the deepest part, it is even more mysterious and magnificent. It is said that there are all kinds of temples from before the primordial age. There is even a god city that stands on the clouds and never falls." The hundreds of mortals had never seen such a scene. They were all dumbfounded and called out the immortal land. Some people even knelt down directly. In front of them, there was a flash of light. Several figures rushed over quickly. The people of the Yaoguang's sacred land were in front of them. With a middle-aged man in the lead, several young men and women followed him and landed on the ground. It was impossible for Yi Fan to say that he was not nervous. However, he had to take a risk. He could not survive in the southern region. Fortunately, no one in the Yaoguang's sacred land knew him except for the saintess. He felt that it was impossible for him to meet the saintess of the Yaoguang's sacred land. The people of the Jade Void Gate hurried forward and bowed respectfully. The middle-aged man waved his hand and asked them to stand up. A dazzling light covered the hundreds of people. Strange energy was fluctuating. After a quarter of an hour, the light disappeared. The middle-aged man nodded and said, "No problem. There is no divine power." Hearing this, Yi Fan let out a long sigh. At the same time, his heart sank. The celestial bestowal powder was so terrifying that it could temporarily dry up his divine power. Even a powerful cultivator could not see it. Could he still recover? The middle-aged cultivator waved his sleeve. Suddenly, the sky was covered and the hundreds of people were taken in. The hundreds of mortals cried out in surprise. This kind of secret technique made them extremely shocked. However, not long after, they saw the sun again. They appeared on a huge island floating in the sky. Around them, the fog was hazy and the clouds were moving up and down. They could faintly see many mountains floating in the distance. They were majestic but did not lose their beauty. They could be called magnificent. This is the Yaoguang's sacred land. I have only seen a small part of it. It is so grand and magnificent. No wonder it is called a sacred land. Taishan is big enough, but it cannot be compared to this. Yi Fan sighed. He really wanted to know how magnificent the various ancient temples in the depths of the Yaoguang's sacred land were. He wanted to see the immortal city that would never fall. However, he could not do as he wished. Right now, he was just a mortal who was going to dig for sources. Suddenly, Yi Fan's expression froze. On the floating island, a woman landed. She was otherworldly and extremely familiar. She wore a blue robe and looked like a white lotus with rolling dewdrops. She also looked like a snow lotus on a snowy mountain. She gave off a refreshing and natural feeling. Wei Wei. Yi Fan was shocked. He had seen an old friend. Wei Wei came from the Void Spirit Wonderland. She was the one who brought Yi Fan, Pang Bo, and the others out of the forest outside the barren ancient forbidden land. Rumor had it that she was extremely talented and rarely seen in 1,000 years. The Void Spirit Wonderland did not want to waste her talent and sent her to the Yaoguang's sacred land. He did not think they would meet again today. Yi Fan turned to the side, not wanting to be discovered by her. Senior sister Yao Shi is back. This time, she seems to have suffered a great loss outside. Her injuries are very serious. A disciple from the Yaoguang's sacred land said. Senior sister Yao Shi will be going to the northern region soon. Wei Wei's red lips parted as she glanced at Yi Fan. Then, she slowly walked away. Up ahead, the fog was hazy. A gate stood before them. All mortals had to pass through and once again, they would be inspected. Other than the hundreds of them, there were thousands of people waiting here. Everyone passed through one by one and nothing happened. This made Yi Fan sigh in relief. I need to go to the northern region. Today, I will bring a group of people with me. In the center of the island, there was a high platform. It was completely made of Xian jade and was shining brightly. An old man in green stood on top with some young disciples behind him. Farewell, venerable elder. Wei Wei and the others bowed below the platform. Whoosh! The old man in green waved his sleeve and all the thousands of people were taken into his sleeve. Then, the Xian jade platform shot up into the sky and the gate opened. He stepped in and the young people followed him. After being taken into the sleeve of the Yaoguang's sacred land, Yi Fan sighed in relief. He was about to enter the northern region. This time, he had finally left the southern region. Chapter 177. It was absolutely quiet. Time didn't pass, and there were no lights or shadows. It was extremely quiet in the pitch-black void. It felt like a moment, but also like 10 lifetimes. This strange journey was finally over, and people could feel the flow of time. The void split open, and the highest elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land walked out, followed by several young disciples. They stood respectfully aside. He waved his sleeve, and a gray fog filled the air. Thousands of people fell to the ground and got out of his wide sleeve. Were they in the northern region? Everyone was both nervous and expectant. Yi Fan was a little excited. Finally, they had come to the other side of the eastern continent. A brand new life was about to begin. What kind of place was this? Looking around, it was completely different from what he had imagined. There were no flowers, no bustling crowds, and no vibrant plants. The land was desolate. The soil was red, and the rocks were reddish-brown. It was bleak and lonely. The boundless land was extremely empty. There was no sign of life at all. Only some bare stone mountains dotted the horizon. It was a barren land without any signs of life. There was no sign of life at all. It was lifeless. This is the northern region? Didn't they say that this place was full of gold and pearls? Not to mention people, I can't even see a blade of grass. What kind of place is this? We have to collect origin source here for 10 years before we can go back to the southern region. Oh my God. At this moment, thousands of people were dumbfounded. This cold and bitter place that resembled the Gobi gave rise to a bad feeling in everyone's hearts. The highest elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land frowned and said, "Didn't the school that sent you here tell you what kind of place this is? It's completely different from what they said. We didn't expect it to be like this. This is a place where even wild birds won't land. The northern region has always been like this." The highest elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land said calmly. The northern region was boundless and famous for its origin source mines. Compared to the vast land, this place was sparsely populated. There were no signs of human habitation within thousands of miles. Most of the places were barren. Success came from the origin source, and failure also came from the origin source. This mysterious substance condensed the essence of life and seemed to have sucked up all the spiritual qi in the entire northern region. It was difficult for the words outstanding people and prosperous land to have anything to do with the northern region. There were also oases in the northern region, but compared to the boundless land, they were really insignificant. This place was rich in origin energy, so the people here did not have to worry about food and clothing. However, it was also because of origin energy that battles to the death often broke out. The people here were fierce and often fought over origin ores. Therefore, when the great sage dug the origin source mines in the northern region, they mostly brought people from their own regions. The origin source was as precious to cultivators as gold was to mortals. As a result, there were bandits everywhere. Not only the locals, but also forces from all over the eastern barren territory. Not only the locals, but there were also other forces in the origin source mines. Generally, the origin source mines was chaotic. This barren land was famous because of the origin, and it was destined to be chaotic and bloody. The highest elder of the Wavering Light Holy Land walked forward, leaving a series of footprints on the red ground. The sound of wind and thunder could be heard. Suddenly, his figure disappeared ahead. The Grand Elder of the Wavering Light's sacred land walked forward, leaving behind a series of footprints on the ground. There were sounds of wind and thunder. Suddenly, his figure disappeared. The ground shook. The mountains and rivers seemed to be moving. Thousands of people couldn't stand still. Many fell to the ground, their faces filled with terror. This area was covered in profound Tao patterns. It gathered the power of the mountains and rivers, protecting the origin source region of the Wavering Light sacred land. The thousands of mortals, whether they were willing or not, had no choice after coming to the northern region. They could only hope that the 10 years would pass quickly and they would earn enough money to return to the southern region to enjoy the wealth they had exchanged for 10 years of youth. With so many people coming, accommodation and food were all problems. However, there were people specially arranged for them. The Grand Elder of the Wavering Light's sacred land disappeared after arriving. The northern region had endless mining areas, but in terms of production, it was the area around the Origin ancient mine. With it as the center, the area within 100,000 miles was divided equally among the Great Sage's lands. The Origin ancient mine was one of the 7 forbidden areas of the Eastern Wasteland. It was in the deepest part of this area and was surrounded by the Great Sage's lands. However, no one dared to explore it. Countless years ago, too many inauspicious things had happened in the Origin ancient mine. One Saint Lord after another went and never returned. No one dared to have any ideas about it. That place became the legendary Nightmare Earth. In the northern region, the Origin ancient mine was the most mysterious and terrifying, but if one didn't provoke it, there wouldn't be any disasters. For the sacred land, the greatest danger was those bandits. The northern region was a place where the people were fierce and bandits were everywhere. Blood was shed every day. It was truly a chaotic place. Powerful bandits came from all over the eastern wasteland. There were even wanderers from the central plains and the northern desert. They had all come for the Origin source, forming a terrifying force. Even the sacred land couldn't sit back and relax. Their Origin source region was also in danger of being robbed. This wasn't an exaggeration. Some bandits were extremely terrifying. Their strength was comparable to the Grand Elders of the sacred land. They came and went without a trace and were very difficult to capture. In the northern region, there were 13 most famous bandits. They each led a group of powerful warriors and seriously threatened the safety of the sacred land's Origin area. The Great Sage's land had encircled and suppressed them many times, but they all ended in failure. The 13 bandits fled after one attack, and it was very difficult to find their traces. Kill. Suddenly, a thunderous sound exploded and shook the sky. It seemed to be proving that the northern region was full of blood and chaos. Thousands of mortals had just entered the Origin area of the Yaoguang's sacred land. The power of heaven and earth condensed by the Tao patterns hadn't gathered yet when a group of heavenly soldiers arrived. There were only 70 to 80 people who had come. Each of them rode on wild beasts with thick scales. Their roars could be heard for dozens of miles, and their killing intent soared. This was a group of powerful knights. They were surrounded by a bloody aura. It was obvious that they had killed countless people. They had gathered unimaginable killing intent, and there was a bloody light lingering around them. Thousands of mortals collapsed to the ground on the spot. They were completely stimulated by the killing intent. It was cold to the bone, making them tremble. They couldn't stand on the ground at all. 70 to 80 wild beasts roared, and their iron hooves shattered the sky. They all rushed in. In the center, there was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 30s. He was sitting on a Zhou beast. His iron clothes flickered, and he looked very heroic. There were 18 flags on his back. They fluttered in the wind as if they could shatter the world. Each flag was as red as blood, and their killing intent soared to the sky. It was as if they had drunk the blood of countless creatures. Clang, clang, clang. He threw the 3 blood-colored flags towards the ground. The flagpoles pierced into the ground like pillars that supported the heavens. His imposing manner was unfathomable. The flags swayed and clanging sounds rang out. Blood lights soared into the sky. The Tao patterns on the ground suddenly lost their effectiveness. The power of heaven and earth stopped moving, and it couldn't cover this place. All of this was because of the 3 blood-colored flags. Kill. These knights were all incomparably powerful. They were like heavenly generals with unparalleled battle strength. They rode on the beasts like a flood of steel, and the sky rumbled. Who dares to break into the Yaoguang forbidden ground? The cultivators of the Yaoguang's sacred land all flew up to the sky and blocked their way. The leaders were 3 old men with white hair and beards, and their eyes were sharp like lightning. I, Jiang Yi, am here. Who dares to stop me? The middle-aged man in the center riding on the Zowu beast had a cold iron outfit, and 15 blood-colored flags were stuck on his back, bursting out a horrifying energy like an ocean. He pulled out a flag and rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. People couldn't follow his speed with their eyes, they could only see a blur. The 9th bandit, Jiang Yi. The cultivators of the Yaoguang's sacred land were shocked. The 3 old men's expressions changed, and they took out their weapons to stop him. However, this legendary bandit was extremely brave, they couldn't stop him at all. The blood-colored flag shook violently. More than a dozen cultivators behind the 3 old men of the Yaoguang's sacred land all screamed in pain, and they were killed on the spot. Beams of bloody light gathered toward the flag, and more than a dozen dead bodies fell from the sky. Jiang Yi, you are from the clan of the remote antiquity. Why are you so violent? The 3 old men shouted. You don't have the right to ask. Jiang Yi rode his beast, and the roar of the Zowu beast shook the mountains and rivers. The blood-colored flag in his hand pierced forward like a long spear. The 3 old men joined hands to resist. One of them took out a treasured pestle that was as big as a mountain, and it emitted a godly light as it pressed down. Crack! The blood-colored flag was indestructible. The pole of the flag was like the sharpest spear, and it hit the mountain-sized pestle, shattering it on the spot. This. The old man quickly retreated, leaving a blur behind. Unfortunately, he couldn't be compared to Jiang Yi's speed. The blood-colored flag stabbed forward, and it pierced through the air, directly piercing through the legendary cultivator. Bang! Jiang Yi shook his hand, and the old man who was stuck in the flag was shattered into pieces. A few beams of bloody light entered the flag. You! Everything happened so fast that the 2 old men didn't even have time to stop it. Go and accompany him. Jiang Yi waved the flag, and the blood-colored flag fluttered in the wind. Bang! Bang! The 2 legendary cultivators collapsed on the spot. They couldn't resist at all. This was a shocking scene. Jiang Yi was unstoppable, and his great flag suppressed the sky. The Zowu beast he sat on raised its head and roared. The sky shook, and killing intent filled the air. The 9th great bandit, Jiang Yi. 2 supreme elders rushed over from the distance. One of them was the old man who crossed the void and brought Yi Fan and the others here. You are a direct descendant of the Huanggu family, but you are willing to fall and become a great bandit. Why is that? A supreme elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land shouted. After my big brother Jiang Zhou left the Jiang family, I completely separated myself from the family. Don't mention this identity in front of me again. Jiang Yi's tiger eyes released cold light. We don't care what happens between you and the Jiang family. Why did you plunder the Yaoguang Holy Land source area? What a joke. Jiang Yi sneered and said, the source area outside the origin ancient mine should belong to the people of the northern region. What right do you have to occupy it? Yi Fan was shocked. He was not unfamiliar with the name Jiang Zhe. He was a genius of the Jiang family, but for some unknown reason, he left the Jiang family and died in a foreign land. Little Tingting was his descendant. Bang! A blood-colored flag fell and stuck into the ground. It suddenly expanded like an ancient tree reaching the sky. It was hundreds of zhang tall, and thousands of mortals were covered in a bloody light. I don't want to hurt the innocent. You 2 old things can come. The 9th bandit, Jiang Yi, waved his hand at the riders behind him and said, you guys go get the source. I will stop these 2 old things. The 14 blood-colored flags behind him all rose into the sky, like pillars supporting the sky. They covered the 2 supreme elders of the Yaoguang Holy Land. Behind them, dozens of cavalry roared past like a flood, shaking the sky. Yi Fan found it hard to calm down. The origin ancient mine, the 13 great bandits, the Jiang family, and the Jade Lake Holy Land seemed to be very close. Chapter 178. Walala. The 14 blood-red flags shook and covered the sky. It was like the beginning of the world. The entire sky was covered in chaos. The two great elders of the Yaoguang's sacred land tried to break out, but they couldn't get out of the red area. The flags fluttered, and every single one of them was 300 m in height. Every single time they fluttered, strands of sword light would shoot out, and they were invincible and sharp. Jiang Yi, at your level, only the divine spirit is useful to you. It is meaningless to rob the source area of the Yaoguang's sacred land. A great elder of the Yaoguang's sacred land had just finished speaking when a sharp sword light lit up the sky. It was like a lightning strike and cut off a corner of his sleeve. You. He looked pale. I can use the divine spirit to exchange for what I need. Jiang Yi's voice was calm. He sat on the Zhouwu beast and moved his hands slowly. The 14 blood-red flags were like a flood. They shook violently and changed their positions quickly. Jiang Yi's hands seemed to have endless magic power. Although they were moving slowly, the horrible energy they emitted was frightening. The 14 flags were shaking together. Bang! The sky was shaking. It was like a giant roller was rolling over the sky. The two great elders of the Yaoguang's sacred land were frightened. Powerful as they were like duckweeds in the raging sea. They were swaying in the sky and couldn't stop themselves. The 14 blood-red flags shook violently and made clanging sounds. They had an unparalleled power that could tear the sky apart. 8 God barbaric force. The two great elders of the Yaoguang's sacred land were shocked. Jiang Yi's hands were moving slower and slower, but the energy he emitted was more and more terrifying. That pair of hands possessed a demonic nature. The sky trembled because of him, and the void was constantly collapsing. Under this kind of demonic power, the 14 flags were like 14 blood gods, their might overflowing the heavens. Bang! A great elder of the Yaoguang's sacred land was careless. Half of his clothes were broken by a flag. His face turned pale and his body shook. You have cultivated the 8 God barbaric force of the Jiang family to such a level. It was out of the two great elders of the Yaoguang's sacred land's expectation. The 8 divinities' barbaric force was a top-notch divine force, and it possessed a demonic nature. Once it was cultivated to its peak, it was practically unstoppable and unstoppable. This supreme secret technique was the Jiang family's secret technique. Just like the Ji family's void palm print, it was the peak secret technique of their respective ancient scriptures. Jiang Yi's hands were getting slower and slower, and in the end, they almost stopped in midair. However, it was even more terrifying, as if the 8 great gods were really using their brute force. The sky was like a swamp or a demonic force field, which made the two highest elders of the Yaoguang Holy Land move more and more slowly, as if they were about to be restrained there. As for the 14 banners, scarlet flames surged into the sky, forcing the two of them to move closer and closer. The space between them was shrinking. Bang! Just as Jiang Yi's hands were about to stop moving, he suddenly shook them. The space in front of them suddenly collapsed, and the 14 flags shook violently. The 8 gods' barbaric force spread out like thousands of raging waves. It was incomparably violent and domineering, and directly sent the two grand supreme elders flying. Blood trickled down the corners of the mouths of the two highest elders of the Yaoguang Holy Land, and they looked astonished. The 8 gods' barbaric force is indeed terrifying. No wonder it is called the supreme secret technique. However, if this is all you have, I am afraid you will not be able to kill us, and you will die. The two of them looked indifferent, and their voices were low. Jiang Yi had made them spit blood, which made it difficult for them to calm down. Kill me? Come and try. Jiang Yi sat on the Zhouwu beast motionlessly, and his hands started to move again. At the same time, the two highest elders of the Yaoguang Holy Land, one of them took out the purple gold gourd, and the other took out a copper bell. Both of them hung above their heads, and many colorful lights fell down, covering them like a curtain. The sword lights from the 14 banners were dazzling, but they couldn't get close to the two highest elders at the moment, and they couldn't get close to them. As the 3 powerful cultivators fought against each other, the sky started to shake violently, as if the galaxy was pouring down. It was splendid, and the destructive aura drowned that place. Even the ground was affected. However, there was a huge banner stuck in the ground, and it was hundreds of meters tall. Rays of blood-red light flowed out of it, covering thousands of ordinary people. No one was hurt. The 8 gods' barbaric force. Yi Fan looked up at the sky and murmured to himself. He thought of some records in the Book of Ascension. The first of the 8 gods is the Lord of Heaven. The second is the Lord of Heaven. The temple must be built under a high mountain, on a small mountain, and its name is Ho. The third is the Lord of Heaven. Not long after, the strange beasts roared, and dozens of riders rushed over. Jiang Yi's men had returned with a lot of resources. Boom! Jiang Yi used the 8 gods' barbaric force, and his hands shook violently in the air, pushing back the 2 highest elders. Let's go! He and the riders rushed into the sky, and the 14 blood-red banners stopped the 2 highest elders, so they couldn't chase after them. On the ground, there were 4 banners, and they flew into the sky one after another. In the end, the 14 banners also disappeared with the blood-red light that covered the sun. The 2 highest elders chased after them, not willing to let them go. At the same time, battle cries came from the sky. The reinforcements from the Yaoguang's sacred land had arrived. The area around the Origin ancient mine was divided among the sacred lands of the Eastern Barren Territory. The Yaoguang's sacred land had several source zones, and each one was guarded by powerful warriors. Unfortunately, Jiang Yi was prepared. He escaped after one attack, opened the space gate, and disappeared. In the end, the highest elders from the Yaoguang's sacred land returned without any results, and their faces were dark. Yi Fan was speechless. The 13 bandits were too arrogant. They even dared to rob a sacred land. In fact, the 13 bandits all had extraordinary backgrounds. Some were powerful warriors from the Eastern Barren Territory, some were powerful warriors from the Central Plains, and some were giants from the Northern Desert. The storm passed quickly. The thousands of mortals were separated and distributed to different areas of the source zone. Even though it was their first time here, it didn't give people a sense of novelty. The source zone covered in Tao patterns was no different from the outside world. Desolation was the eternal theme. Low stone houses, reddish-brown rocks, and mining areas were lifeless and lifeless. In the distance, the miners were expressionless. They worked stiffly, going in and out of the mines, transporting rocks and rocks. They were almost numb. They didn't react to the newcomers at all, as if they had lost their souls. Many people felt a chill in their hearts. Was this the portrayal of their future? Monotonous labor, repeating day after day, becoming the walking dead. In 3 days, Yi Fan learned a lot. Collecting resources was not a big deal, and it only required physical strength. However, once something evil happened in the mines, it was extremely dangerous. Even powerful cultivators couldn't survive, let alone mortals. Few people could live for more than 10 years, and those who could return to the southern region with large amounts of gold coins were few and far between. Yi Fan frowned. The surroundings were covered in dense Tao patterns, and they were isolated from the outside world. They could only leave during special times. It would take a lot of effort to escape. He was not anxious. This place was a treasure ground. There were origin stones buried underground. If he could collect them and use them to cultivate, he would be able to get twice the results with half the effort. In this area, the only thing he was afraid of was the Yaoguang Saintess. If Yao Shi came, it would be bad. Thinking of the corset in his arms, he laughed. Even if the Yaoguang Saintess came to the northern region, she wouldn't enter a dusty mining area. She must have something else to do. Yi Fan cracked his own bones and painfully fixed them. Many parts were deformed and needed to be reconnected. Damn you, it hurts so much. In the dead of night, Yi Fan grimaced. He fixed all his bones back to their original positions. He was covered in cold sweat from the pain. After a few assignments, the people around him kept changing. He was not afraid of attracting attention. These days, he only smeared dirt on his face to avoid giving himself away. After a few more days, he went through another assignment. He was completely worry-free. he didn't need to worry about his appearance changing and arousing suspicion. In the end, Yi Fan was assigned to the 15th mining area. These days, he had been learning about origin stones from others and working in the well. Origin stones were very precious and rare. When digging a mine, one had to first determine the vein. A vein of origin stones was a mine. Even in this area, origin stones were not endless. A small-scale origin stone was just a vein of origin stones. It was good enough to dig out a few kilograms of origin stones. Poor origin stones could only produce a few taels of origin stones. A large-scale origin stone might be able to dig out more than 1 square meter of origin stones. This was a shocking amount, but it was rare to see such a vein of origin stones. No wonder that damn Ji Hui gave me a fist-sized origin stone and felt that it was enough to repay my kindness to the Ji clan. Origin stones were rare items. A fist-sized origin stone could allow a Divine Bridge Realm cultivator to advance by a realm. At that time, he was in the Divine Bridge Realm. However, for a bottomless pit like Yi Fan, a fist-sized origin stone was far from enough to break through a realm. This wasn't a shortcoming. Although he needed a lot of life essence, his god power was more vigorous than ordinary people. It was hard for cultivators of the same realm to compare to him. Besides, he could continuously absorb origin stones for his own use. There was no limit. And for ordinary Divine Bridge Realm cultivators, although a fist-sized origin stone could advance by a realm, they couldn't absorb it immediately. They needed to absorb it slowly and take a long time to refine it into their bodies. If there was a mountain of origin in front of him, Yi Fan could continuously refine it. Ordinary cultivators couldn't. They could only do it slowly. Even if they were envious, they could only stare. Of course, refining natural treasures for one's own use was only feasible in the early stages of cultivation. Once one cultivated to the 3rd secret realm, it would be very difficult to rely on external objects. At that time, one had to comprehend Tao. After reaching the 3rd secret realm, only comprehending Tao could increase one's cultivation. There were no other shortcuts. The 15th mining area was a vast and boundless land. The reddish-brown soil and stones were hard to excavate. In this area, a dozen mines had already been dug. The amount of origin stone was small. Each mine only produced 1 kilogram of origin stone. Each origin vein only produced 1 kilogram of origin stone. It was indeed a bit poor. However, the origin stone collected was crystal clear and had few impurities. The quality was very high. In addition, the 15th mining area was boundless. It had just been excavated, so it was hard to conclude that there were no super origin veins here. On the 20th day, after Yi Fan understood enough, he was finally sent down to the mines to begin his first origin stone harvest. Amitba, let me harvest origin stone and refine it for you. Suddenly, just as Yi Fan entered the mine, a scream came from outside. Hearing such a scream, the experienced origin stone miners all climbed up the mine as if their lives depended on it, fleeing in panic. Damn it, it's my first day harvesting origin stone, and I've already encountered something evil? Yi Fan's bones had already been reconnected. His physical body was unparalleled. He was as agile as a spirit ape, and he was the first to rush out of the mine. The mine ahead is haunted. There's something ominous in that mine. Those who went in are all dead. An old cultivator from the Yaoguang sacred ground, who was very powerful, died in there before he could even make a sound. Right in front, the neighboring mine was emitting a demonic aura, as if some creature was about to rush out. After seeing this, Yi Fan immediately ran and quickly retreated. He had a bad feeling that he couldn't stay here. Near the mine, many people had collapsed, and there were corpses everywhere. The 15th mining area was in chaos. The origin stone miners were terrified. After running for a few kilometers, Yi Fan stopped and watched from afar. Chapter 179. In front of the mine, there were 50 to 60 corpses lying on the ground. All of them had gray faces and their eyes were wide open. The experienced miners all turned pale. They took a detour from the mine, and no one dared to go forward. The 15th mine was in a state of panic. Everyone had retreated, and most of them were trembling with fear. Wisps of gray mist were seeping out of the mine. Even though they were far away, they could still feel a sense of pressure. What the hell? Yi Fan was shocked. He knew that such things would occasionally happen in the source mine, but he was still surprised when he experienced it himself. An old man who had been mining here for 8 to 9 years said with worry in his eyes, "I have a feeling that the evil this time is not ordinary." Soon, the cultivators from the Yaoguang Holy Land arrived. They were led by a few middle-aged men, and the rest were all young disciples. Who was mining in that mine? Are there any survivors? A middle-aged man asked. I was working in the well. A young man walked up, looking very nervous. Anyone else? The middle-aged man asked again. 6 or 7 people walked out, all of them panicking. What did you see? The middle-aged cultivator asked. We didn't see anything. We only heard screams, and then we escaped. Where's senior brother Qin? Isn't he patrolling here? The middle-aged man frowned. That old immortal also fell in the mine. What? The middle-aged man's eyes widened. Senior brother Qin died? Yes. The origin gatherer was a little nervous. At first, something seemed to have been discovered down there. The old immortal received the report and personally went down to take a look. In the end, something evil happened, and everyone died. Another person added, luckily, we ran away. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived standing in the well. Needless to say, everyone saw that there were 50 to 60 corpses at the well. The middle-aged cultivators from the Yaoguang Holy Land looked at each other and frowned. This was the last thing they wanted to see. Once the source mine was haunted, it would be extremely dangerous. The well was filled with gray mist. It looked very strange and unsettling. Did they dig out something alive? A middle-aged man said. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. If that was the case, it would be a bad sign. It said that the Jiang family dug up a ghost mine not long ago and dug out a few bloody bones. As a result, many people died. The conversation between the middle-aged cultivators made Yi Fan's heart skip a beat. The source mine underground was full of mysteries and unknowns. Let me catch a wisp of gray mist and see what it is. A middle-aged man opened his mouth and spat out a thumb-sized silver bottle. It turned into a streak of silver light and flew forward. It released a gentle halo of light and began to absorb the gray mist. It turned into a dim light and began to absorb the gray mist. Something astonishing happened. As soon as a wisp of gray mist entered, the silver bottle cracked. It became dim and fell to the ground. This is... The middle-aged man's body shook. A weapon refined by a cultivator of the Holy Ji Palace's secret territory couldn't even block a wisp of gray mist. What is it? Everyone was shocked. The middle-aged men all revealed serious expressions. This time, it was a bit unusual, and they didn't have much confidence. After an entire 2 hours, the gray mist finally dispersed and disappeared from the world. Not long after, a chicken was thrown into the mine. It kept chirping, but it didn't die even after a long time. The middle-aged cultivators sighed in relief. It's not as bad as I thought. Looks like it's just some baleful aura, not a ghost mine. Several middle-aged cultivators walked forward, followed by a dozen young disciples. They stood at the mouth of the well, examining each corpse, and then looked down. Carry these corpses away. Find an abandoned mine and bury them, ordered a middle-aged cultivator. All of the source gatherers retreated together. No one was willing to touch those who had mysteriously died. When the middle-aged cultivator saw this, he frowned and said, "The malevolent aura has dissipated, there is no danger." Many of the origin gatherers shuddered in fear. They emptied dozens of corpses and threw them into an abandoned mine, burying them on the spot. The middle-aged cultivators discussed among themselves and prepared to go down the well to take a look. Why don't we let them clear out the corpses first before we go down? a middle-aged cultivator suggested as he swept his gaze over the surrounding origin gatherers. The surrounding people instantly trembled in fear and retreated one after another. What are you afraid of? That chicken is fine, which means it is already safe inside. Are all of you living people less than a chicken? When Yi Fan heard him say this, he really wanted to spit on his face. If he was not afraid, why didn't he go down himself? Why did he want the source gatherers to scout the way first? A young disciple of the Yaoguang Holy Land personally went up to choose a person. Unfortunately, Yi Fan was chosen and was forced to go down the well to carry the corpses. It was dark inside the mine, and even the torch could not completely illuminate it. Corpses were scattered all over the ground. Some of the cowardly source gatherers immediately trembled when they saw this scene. In front of them, specks of light could be seen. An source gatherer the size of a human head was glowing and embedded in the ground. An old cultivator in his 50s was lying there. He had been dead for a long time. This is the problem. Yi Fan carefully walked closer. After seeing everything clearly, he sucked in a breath of cold air. There was actually a claw inside that head-sized source gatherer. It was similar to a human palm, but it had a lot of red hair. It was an inch long, and even the palm was no exception. It looked somewhat sinister. This is at least a primordial creature. Yi Fan was shocked. Ghost claw. Monster. The surrounding people all cried out in shock. Yi Fan sent out his divine sense and carefully examined it. His expression changed again. This was originally a huge rock, but it was only revealed after the source gatherers broke it open. There were actually bone patterns in the rock that were connected to this source gatherer. This. He couldn't help but be shocked. This should be a fossil. Only the palm had been preserved by the source gatherer. It was completely intact, and the other parts had become stone bones. This should be a humanoid creature. No, it actually has bat wings. A humanoid creature with wings was definitely not human. At this point, he could also see why there was a gray fog and why so many people had died. When the source gatherer broke through the huge rock, a corner of the source gatherer was damaged. A bit of the palm's flesh was exposed to the air and shriveled. That was how the gray fog was produced. What kind of terrifying creature is this? Just a bit of flesh exposed to the air and it has such terrifying power. Just a wisp of gray fog was enough to shatter the weapons of the Dao Palace's secret realm cultivators. It's really unimaginable. Yi Fan was shocked. The only fortunate thing was that this source gatherer was very unusual. It was overflowing with color and gathered the essence of heaven and earth on its own. The damaged area had already been sealed by the brilliance. At this time, the cultivators above also flew in. Their spiritual senses were sharp, and they sensed that there was no danger below, so they were no longer afraid. This is a claw with flesh and blood. Several middle-aged cultivators cried out on the spot. A few years ago, we dug up a severed arm. It was also sealed in the source gatherer and sent back to the sacred land. The Grand Supreme Elder once said that if we found such flesh and blood, we should immediately report it. It must be a serious matter. These cultivators carefully cleaned up the rocks and moved the source gatherer and the huge rock to the ground. The Grand Supreme Elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land was alarmed. He came in person to carefully observe the palm and the human-shaped mark on the huge rock. Unbelievable. He seemed to be very surprised. What kind of creature is this? Next to him, a young disciple asked carefully. Before ancient times. The Grand Supreme Elder only said 2 words before he suddenly stopped. Obviously, the Grand Supreme Elder was not calm. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. Then he waved his sleeve and put away the source gatherer and the huge rock. You guys continue to dig here. Once you find anything, immediately report to me. This is a very important matter, and I will remember you guys. He looked solemn, and then he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Why didn't the Grand Supreme Elder tell us in detail? What is that creature? At least it is a creature from before the immemorial age. It seems to be extremely terrifying and powerful. Were humans born at that time? What position did we have? The doubts of the young disciples of the Yaoguang Holy Land were also the doubts in Yifan's heart. He really wanted to know the answer. Could it be that some secret technique or divine power could be researched from that claw? That is hard to say. If it is a creature that is powerful enough, that palm might really be a priceless treasure. The middle-aged cultivators were also discussing in low voices. I'm afraid that even the important figures of my Yaoguang Holy Land cannot truly understand. In the current world, perhaps only the origin ancient mind has the answer. There are creatures that walked out of the exceptional divine source alive there. Don't say any more. The origin ancient mine is a forbidden land. You cannot speak carelessly in the source mining area. The origin ancient mine was at the center of this area. It was surrounded by the source regions of the great sage's land. No one dared to explore it. It was an ominous place. In the next few days, they dug 7 or 8 abandoned wells, but they didn't even dig up 1 or 2 source gatherers. Yifan sighed inwardly. He still wanted to fill his own pockets. The other source gatherers rejoiced because no misfortune befell them in the past few days. They didn't dig up any ghost mines. Just when everyone thought that the storm had passed, on the 7th day, a cry of alarm suddenly sounded from a mine. What happened? The Yaoguang Holy Land's cultivators shouted from the surface. During these past few days, they didn't take a single step out of this mining area. They didn't dare act carelessly because of the mission that the Supreme Elder gave them. Bones, I discovered a large amount of bones. The people below were extremely terrified. When the other people in this mining area received the news, they immediately rushed out and began to run into the distance. Source gatherers often faced demonic matters. As soon as there was the slightest sign of trouble, they would immediately protect themselves. The 15th mining area was in chaos. Yifan finally understood why so few source gatherers could live for more than 10 years. Even cultivators couldn't live for long if they were plagued by demonic matters every 2 or 3 days. What is going on? Normally, strange matters don't happen even once a year. Why are they happening so frequently these past few days? The experienced source gatherers all developed a bad premonition. I feel like when that claw was dug up last time, it wasn't the end, but rather just the beginning. This mining area is most likely a ghost mine. A gargantuan monster is about to appear. I also have the same feeling. Something big is definitely going to happen. I heard that the origin ancient mine hasn't been peaceful for the past year. I'm afraid this is a sign of great misfortune. Yifan's heart trembled. He felt that these source gatherers should have an instinctive sense after facing such things for a long time. Perhaps their premonitions would come true. There's no need to run. It's just bones. There's no danger. Hurry up and come back. Let's dig this big mine together and see what exactly is going on. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land ordered everyone to return. They gathered all the manpower and began to dig the very deep mine. In order to encourage everyone, they also personally entered the mine and commanded everyone on the spot. However, when they saw everything below with their own eyes, they also sucked in a breath of cold air. Countless bones had turned into fossils. It was difficult to count how many there were. As long as the rocks were broken, there would definitely be a large number of bones inside. It was enough to make one's scalp tingle. In the end, there were no rocks, only stone bones. This place was simply like a burial pit. Even the cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land felt a chill down their backs. The aura here was very strange. It was getting colder and colder. At this moment, someone cried out in alarm, "Blood is being dug up." In an instant, miserable screams rang out one after another. Over 100 people had died on the spot. Oh my God, a ghost mine. A gargantuan monster. I see it. Oh my God. Both Yifan and the cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land were terrified. Chapter 180. It was a very large source mine. Thousands of people were digging inside, but it was still very spacious. Terrified screams rang out and traveled very far. The source miners ran toward the exit as if they had gone crazy. There were stone bones everywhere, piled up like rocks. People kept falling down. People were squeezed and trampled on. In the deepest part of the mine, a bloody mist floated. Anyone who touched it screamed and instantly turned into a pool of blood, dying a violent death. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land all took action. They either took out their weapons or used secret techniques to block the cold mist. However, neither the weapons nor the secret techniques could stop the bloody mist. It was very corrosive. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen weapons were melted. Ghost. Help. It has 3 eyes. I see the devil. The source miners ran for their lives. They screamed in extreme fear. Yi Fan felt that something was wrong. The premonition of those old source collection elders was most likely coming true. His hands and feet were nimble, and he ran at the very front. In a few breaths, he rushed out of the mine and only stopped when he reached a safe place. Bang! The mine was broken through. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land rushed out. One of them was a middle-aged man. He almost went crazy and screamed in fear. But in the blink of an eye, he turned into a pool of blood and fell down. The mine was in chaos. Screams and cries could be heard everywhere. The people who had escaped were trembling. They crawled and rolled away from the place. It was not until 7 minutes later that everything calmed down. Nearly 1,000 people had gone down to dig the stone bones. In the end, only about 300 people had escaped. The rest had all died inside. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land all looked gloomy. They had just tried to block the bloody mist, but 5 people had died, including a middle-aged man from the Holy Ji Palace. They hurried to report this to their superiors. The ghost mine had appeared. This was the last thing they wanted to see. Soon, a great elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land and 7 or 8 famous figures rushed over and asked about the situation in the mine. In the end, no one could explain in detail. They could only say that they saw a ghost that was not moving. All of you, step back, Great Elder Li Yuan of the Yaoguang Holy Land shouted. He pointed his finger like a sword and slashed forward. A beam of light shot out, turned into a huge sword of light, and slashed downwards. The noise was like thunder, dust and sand flying everywhere. That large mine was cut open. It was pitch black and gloomy, looking extremely strange. Grand Elder Li Yuan continued to shake his finger. The light sword that was over 100 feet long continued to descend, cutting open the mine and exposing it to the outside world. All of the earth and rocks were teleported several hundred meters away, and a huge crater appeared there. Many stone bones were extracted by Li Yuan and landed not far away. Yi Fan watched from the side and was shocked. A large number of bones had turned into fossils, and upon closer inspection, he discovered that they were not human bones. Even though there were some humanoid creatures, they were still different from humans. Grand Elder Li Yuan kept moving, using his sword to cut open the origin ore, and using spells to pull out all the stone bones. Soon, a mountain of stone bones appeared on the reddish-brown earth. There were at least 10,000 of them. Streams of bloody mist rose, and when Li Yuan's light swords came into contact with it, they emitted a sizzling sound and were actually dissolved. He waved his large sleeve, scattering the bloody mist and sending it into the heavens. Only after a long time had passed did this place calm down. Then, he used a secret spell, and green light condensed into a huge hand that reached into the depths of the mine. The earth suddenly trembled. The huge hand grabbed all the earth and rocks in the mine and placed them on the ground. Demon. It's that demon. It was a blood-colored earth and rocks, and there were several source stones in it. They were all as big as wash basins. Such a size was very rare and extremely precious. It could be called a rich mine. What was shocking was that there was something inside each source stone, and it was not pure. The first 2 source stones were sealed with bright red liquid, which was obviously blood. Just now, one of the source stones had broken, and the blood inside had flowed out, which led to the tragedy. Just how powerful is this creature? Its blood turned into a bloody mist, and it could even kill cultivators of the Holy Ji Palace secret realm. The legendary figures of the Yaoguang Holy Land were all shocked. Grand Elder Li Yuan also frowned. The third source stone was sealed with a crystalline finger. It was very beautiful, as white and tender as a spring onion. Although it was just a broken finger, people could feel that it was extraordinary, and there was a vigorous energy contained in it. The fourth source stone was the most shocking. Sealed inside was half a head. There were fine scales on its face, and there was a vertical eye on its forehead. It had thick black hair, and the head had been split in half. It should be two different creatures. The thin finger and half a head are obviously not from the same body. The legendary figures were all shocked. These four source stones are too important. I need to personally escort them back to the Holy Land. Grand Elder Li Yuan's expression was solemn. Although it was not the legendary peerless divine source, there was a creature sealed inside, and its value was immeasurable. They could not be lost. He sealed the four source stones and then waved his sleeve, putting them away. Then, he carefully observed the earth and rocks on the ground. Along with the four source stones, there were two broken stone skeletons. One was thin, and the other was fierce. They were two different creatures. Although they were humanoid, they were definitely not human. The thin stone skeleton had 6 arms, and the fierce one had a pair of bone wings. Yi Fan saw it clearly from afar. He was speechless. What kind of powerful creatures were these? Why were they nowhere to be seen? Rumble. Suddenly, the open mine collapsed. Everyone was shocked. The bottom of the mine sank, and a pitch-black hole appeared. It was a mine that looked like a burial pit, but there was a bottomless pit below it. It was not dug by the crowd. It was a deep pit that had been there for a long time, and now it was exposed. A chilling aura soared into the sky, causing everyone to shiver. Grand Elder Li Yuan of the Yaoguang Holy Land could not keep calm anymore. He said, "It seems that this place is not normal." He asked everyone to step back and personally took action. He used his divine consciousness to observe. After a while, he tried his best to use a secret art. Boom! The sky shook and the ground cracked. He used the Yaoguang divine art to make the mine rise. It was a secret art that could move mountains and fill seas. Earth and rocks flew everywhere, and the ground cracked. The mine kept rising. A lot of earth cracked and rocks were thrown into the distance. The Grand Elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land used his secret art to make the earth's crust move violently. The big hole under the burial pit was no longer low, and it was floating up slowly. Oh my! What is that? The red ground shook. The gloomy and oppressive aura became heavier and heavier. A cold metallic luster appeared. A huge iron block. As the earth and rocks moved, the big hole was no longer low. It was level with the ground, and everything could be seen. This was not a small project. The ground was paved with hard stones, and it was very flat. The area was several miles wide. There were also huge stone pillars at the edge, reaching into the sky. In the middle of the stone ground, there was a pyramid made of metal. It was more than 100 meters tall, and it was green with a metallic luster. There was no rust at all. Yi Fan was shocked. What was that? The sun, moon, and stars were carved on it, shining brightly. This huge pyramid was made of an unknown metal. It was an object from the immemorial age at the latest, or even earlier. However, time had not worn it down. Li Yuan, the Grand Elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land, frowned. He waved his sleeve, trying to put the huge pyramid away. However, he was surprised. He tried to move it, and found that he could move it. However, the mist was surging, and he couldn't put it in his sleeve. Something is wrong. Li Yuan walked closer and used his divine power to scan the pyramid. The sun, moon, and stars on it all lit up. After a flash of light, he went inside. Behind him, the famous figures of the Yaoguang Holy Land were all shocked. They looked worried. Boom! The green pyramid shook, and people felt suffocated. Many mortals fell to the ground. After a while, the sun, moon, and stars on the pyramid shone brightly. Li Yuan rushed out with a pale face. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and he staggered backward. Retreat! Everyone retreat! Don't come close, he shouted, and his body was shaking. Yi Fan was shocked. What was so strange about this pyramid that even the Grand Elder of the Yaoguang Holy Land had suffered? This place is very important. Seal all information here. I will return to the Holy Land immediately. Don't come close, Li Yuan said solemnly. He then left in a hurry, preparing to cross the void. The 15th mining area had become a forbidden area. No one was allowed to enter or leave. Yi Fan frowned. This place was not good, and he didn't want to stay for long. However, he couldn't leave now. On the 4th day after the Grand Elder Li Yuan left, the Yaoguang Saintess arrived with news that the Divine Lord would arrive soon. Yi Fan's mouth twitched, and he cursed his bad luck. Yao Shi had actually arrived. If she found out, she would definitely skin him alive. In the distance, he saw Yao Shi. Just like before, she was like a fairy that could topple nations. She was like a pearl that emitted auspicious light. Her jade-like body was suffocating. Thousands of mortals saw her and thought she was a fairy. Many people lost their composure and felt ashamed of themselves. Yi Fan hid among the thousands of mortals, so he wasn't worried about being recognized. He curled his lips. The so-called fairy's bra was still in his arms. If this secret got out, the great sage's land would definitely be shocked. Don't leak any information. Seal the 15th mining area. No one is allowed to enter or leave. The Yaoguang Saintess' voice was like the sound of nature. However, at this moment, the Yaoguang Saintess suddenly stopped talking. Her expression was blank, and she seemed to be very surprised. Yi Fan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the other party had discovered him? That was impossible. At this moment, the other cultivators from the Yaoguang Holy Land also cried out in surprise. You, who are you? How did you get in? Yi Fan turned around and looked at the pyramid. A faint cyan light appeared. In front of the cyan iron tower, an old woman had appeared out of nowhere. She didn't make a sound. No one knew how she got there. It was as if she had appeared out of thin air. She was looking around the pyramid and mumbling something. The 15th mining area was a vast reddish-brown land. It was very spacious. If an outsider broke in, he would have noticed her immediately. However, the crowd had not noticed it at all before this. Yi Fan was extremely shocked. He thought to himself, it's her. He didn't expect to see this old woman again in the northern region. Years ago, when he met Crazy Ole for the first time outside the forbidden area of the remote antiquity, this old woman had shown up. Through her mumbling, he knew that Crazy Ole was from 6,000 years ago. She is from the same generation as Crazy Ole. I can't believe she is here. Yi Fan was surprised. Chapter 181. The old woman was dressed very simply. She looked no different from the other old ladies in the mountain villages. However, this old woman had become the center of attention. The people of the Yaoguang's sacred land did not dare to act rashly as if they were facing a great enemy. The pyramid made of an unknown metal flickered with a faint green luster. The sun, moon, and stars appeared on its surface, emitting rays of clear light that flowed towards the old woman like waves. However, it could not move her at all. The old woman did not move at all. She was not affected at all. She mumbled as she circled around the pyramid. Buzz. The green pyramid trembled and emitted a vibrating sound. Then, light filled the sky. Endless greenery covered the reddish-brown land. Everyone was shocked. The empty and desolate land had completely changed. The grass was boundless and full of vitality. Thousand-year ancient trees stretched across the land. An immemorial aura rushed over. It was vast and ancient like the vast universe. It was like a boundless starry sky. Millions of creatures came one after another. It was as if an ancient world had reappeared. Ear-splitting rumbling sounds could be heard. Giant creatures rolled over like mountains. Many strange races appeared from time to time. The lush land, the dense spirit chi, and the powerful creatures dazzled people's eyes. Is this the northern region of the ancient times? It was full of life and everything was flourishing. It's completely different from now. They could clearly see the formation of the origin. The origin energy of the world was too dense. It crystallized and turned into an origin. Many powerful creatures died. Occasionally, they would be wrapped by the dripping origin and sealed inside. At this point, people finally understood why the ancient creatures had severed fingers and heads left behind. Oh my God, at this moment, people gasped. They saw extremely powerful humanoid creatures that could tear mountains apart with their bare hands. There were many types of humanoid creatures, and they were all different. Some were covered in scales, some had fur, some had majestic bodies, some had delicate bodies, and there were even some that were as beautiful as pearls and jade. All of them were extremely powerful. In that dense ancient forest, one would occasionally see a huge temple, tall and majestic, shocking one's soul. In front of each ancient temple, there were different kinds of humanoid creatures guarding it. They were solemn and sacred. The various temples were completely different. Some were like the Taoist temple, some were like the imperial palace, and there were even pyramids like the one in front of them. Interesting. Right at this moment, the old woman's voice rang out. Everyone could hear it clearly. She waved her sleeves, and all the brilliance in the sky disappeared. All the vigorous vitality on the ground disappeared, and all kinds of tyrannical creatures disappeared. It became a lifeless and barren land again. The clear brilliance flowed back to the pyramid. Whoosh! The old woman stepped forward, directly entering the pyramid. The green pagoda's luster dimmed again, and then it became silent again. Everyone in the Yaoguang Holy Land was frightened. This old woman was unfathomable. They could not stop her, and they could not stop her. Holy Daughter Yaoguang was like a celestial lotus. Her skin was pure and sparkling. At this moment, her mind was shaken. What kind of person was this old woman? Her beautiful eyes widened. Many legendary figures quickly surrounded the green pyramid, quietly waiting for the old woman to appear. Many of the thousands of mortals were frightened out of their wits. The various scenes that appeared just now made them suspect that they had entered another world. The pyramid trembled slightly. The old woman walked out very calmly, as if she was walking on a bridge or a flight of stairs. She was not stopped at all. It is indeed interesting, the old woman said again. But in the ears of the crowd, the meaning was very different. This kind of historical site, for cultivators, was obviously priceless, but she didn't really care about it. Senior, you are. Holy Daughter Yaoguang smiled before speaking. She was like a blossoming fairy, bright and beautiful. I am just an ordinary old woman. The old woman looked at Yao Shi and kindly smiled. You are quite lucky. Holy Daughter Yao Shi was moved. She wanted to say something, but the old woman had already turned around to look at the others. Her gaze swept over the Yaoguang legendary figures one by one. I am going to take it and see if there is anything special about it. I will return it to the Yaoguang Holy Land in the future, said the old woman. Senior, you can't. A few legendary figures wanted to stop her. This was something that the Supreme Elder had warned them to protect. It was not hard to imagine how important it was. But they couldn't stop her at all. The old woman reached out her hand and grabbed the pyramid that was 100 meters tall. The sun, moon, and stars shone brightly. Almost in an instant, the Grand Pyramid became shorter. A green light flashed, and it became the size of a baby's fist. It was like a pearl that was flowing with light in the old woman's hand. With a wave of his hand, he had captured the Azure Pagoda, causing those legendary figures to swallow back their words. They knew that they definitely wouldn't be able to stop him. Yi Fan already knew that the old woman was unfathomable, but he was still very scared. He muttered to himself because the old woman seemed to be glancing at him. The old woman slowly walked into the distance. Her silhouette quickly blurred and disappeared into thin air in an instant. There was no trace of her at all. After the old woman left, the 15th mining area was in chaos. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land were discussing. Such a big thing had to be reported immediately. Go, leave this damned place. This was the urgent thought in Yi Fan's heart. He didn't believe that he couldn't find the source in other places. If he continued here, who knew what else he would find? At that time, he might even lose his life. Besides, Yao Shi was here, and the Yaoguang Holy Lord was coming. They had seen him before, so this place was very dangerous. A while ago, Yi Fan had already thought of how to leave. Every once in a while, he would go out to buy rice and flour. The disciples of the Yaoguang Holy Land didn't want to interact with the mortals. Every time they went out, they would bring some source collectors. He planned to blend into such a team. Once he reached the outside world, he would be able to leap freely in the vast ocean and soar freely in the vast sky. He would no longer be restricted. If it wasn't for the Tao patterns that isolated this place from the outside world, he would have escaped long ago. Find a place to cultivate to the 3rd or 4th secret realm, and then come back to auction the Yaoguang Holy Lady's bra. Yi Fan had evil thoughts. Of course, this was just to give himself motivation. More than a month had passed since he was hit by the immortal sealing powder. Only then did divine power flow in his body, and his sea of reincarnation slowly recovered. During these few days, he had been in the deepest part of the mine and had finally made some progress. He had dug out several walnut-sized source stones and refined them all. Finally, the green lotus in the golden sea of bitterness trembled, and a muffled sound came from his body. His divine power had completely begun to circulate. Yi Fan didn't know what kind of disaster he had experienced. If he had enough of the immortal sealing powder, even the divine power of a powerful cultivator could be completely sealed away. If it weren't for his special constitution, he would have become immortal a long time ago. After his sea of reincarnation was unsealed and his cultivation recovered, Yi Fan prepared to leave this place. Of course, before he left, he was prepared to collect a few more source stones. However, this kind of spiritual object was too rare, and it was difficult to dig out even a few kilograms from a single mine. Moreover, the source stones were covered in a strange layer of stone, and even the spiritual perception of cultivators was useless. There was no way to investigate and dig out more. I really want to take the Yaoguang Holy Land source storehouse. Yi Fan could only think about it. His strength was too low, and he probably wouldn't be able to break through that kind of place without anyone defending it. 2 days later, Yi Fan prepared to leave and sneak into a group of people purchasing resources. It was on this day that he received news that the Yaoguang Holy Lord was about to arrive and that no one was allowed to enter or leave. Damn it, it's really full of twists and turns. I hope nothing bad happens. He was shocked. An hour later, an earth-shattering sound came from outside the origin area. The void had shattered. When the Yaoguang Holy Lord arrived with her people, the void had just cracked open when a peerless expert attacked together, causing the void to collapse. Kill! Shouts of war shook the sky. Outside the origin area, light shot into the sky, magic treasures flew, people shouted, and horses neighed. Countless figures were charging over. Peacock King. The Yaoguang Holy Lord's voice was cold. He was surrounded by 108 rays of light, and many worlds revolved around him. It was as if a divine king had descended. Yaoguang Holy Lord. On the other side, the Peacock King was the same as before. He looked like a graceful youth, but his eyes were sharp and his roars shook the mountains. You monster, you still dare to appear? I'll kill you today. There were quite a few elders behind the Yaoguang Holy Lord, and one of them shouted. I do need to kill someone, but it's you guys. The Blue Serpent King appeared next to the Peacock King. Boom! The earth trembled as a fierce battle erupted. The Tao inscriptions outside the origin area were torn apart, and many cultivators charged in. The fourth and seventh bandit are here. The cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land were in chaos. The entire origin area was in chaos. Yi Fan was shocked. From the shouts of the crowd, he learned that the Blue Serpent King was the fourth bandit in the northern region, and the seventh bandit was an expert called Tu Tian. The two bandits and the Peacock King wanted to kill the Yaoguang Holy Lord. The experts under the two bandits had already charged in and were fighting with the light-shaking realm cultivators inside. If he didn't take advantage of the chaos, Yi Fan would feel like he was letting himself down. He didn't think about the origin treasury. It was impossible to open it, and it was definitely the target of the two bandits. He charged toward a stone tower in the 15th mining area. The origin stones that he had collected were all piled up inside. The sounds of battle shook the sky. No one had the time to care about this place. After all, this place was nothing compared to the origin treasury. The stone tower was less than 10 meters tall, but it was extremely sturdy. Yi Fan pushed on the stone door a few times, but it didn't budge at all. There are also restrictions here. He didn't say anything else as he swung his fist and smashed it. Boom! The stone tower shook as the fifth punch landed, finally breaking the stone door open. Thankfully, there weren't any profound restrictions. Yi Fan squinted his eyes at the brilliant light in front of him. Piece after piece of origin stone was laid out on a jade shelf, glowing brightly. They added up to dozens of kilograms. The origin stones that he had collected over the past few days were all here, and they hadn't been sent away yet. So many. This is the sum of the origin stones from 20 or so mines. Yi Fan felt a surge of excitement in his heart. This many origin stones meant that he could increase his strength. They were priceless treasures to him. He pulled out a pristine jade bottle and stored them all inside. Brother, who are you? You're really fast. You even got here before me. A voice came from outside the stone tower. A young man around 20 years of age stared at him in surprise. I was just stealing. The professional is currently fighting with the people from the Wavering Light's sacred lands, Yi Fan replied casually. I'm the professional you're talking about. I didn't expect you to beat me to it. You're even faster than me. Yi Fan was speechless. The young man in front of him had a medium build. He wasn't very handsome, but his eyes were especially bright. They were like the legendary, thieving light. I heard that the 15th mining area was under attack, and that I might be able to dig up some good origin stones. That's why I came here instead of attacking the origin treasury. The young man's eyes lit up even more, and a thieving light shot out in all directions. He said, according to the rules of our trade, since I got here in time, you should give me a quarter. Who's in the same trade as you? I'm not a professional. Yi Fan wanted to say this, but he felt that this man wasn't ordinary and didn't want to fight with him here. He said, I don't have any special origin stones. If you don't believe me, come and take a look. He pulled out the pristine jade bottle, and an origin stone appeared. If you don't have any, then forget it. The young man was very disappointed and waved his hand. The two of them retreated from the stone tower. Yi Fan was just about to leave when the young man suddenly pulled him back and said, Wait, there's something on you. Why do I sense a familiar aura? I'm really not a professional. I don't have anything special on me. Wait, this is the aura of the Wavering Light's sacred maiden. The young man's eyes shone like pearls as he stared at Yi Fan and said, Brother, you're really not simple. You're even more agile than me. You can even steal something from the Wavering Light's sacred maiden. I'm really not a professional. Yi Fan shook off his hand and said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I once got close to the Wavering Light's sacred maiden. The outstanding people in our trade have a photographic memory. This is her aura, I can't be wrong. The young man didn't have any enmity towards Yi Fan. Instead, he acted very familiar and said, Take it out and let me have a look. Yi Fan guessed that it was definitely the Wavering Light's sacred maiden's bra. He immediately pulled out the pristine jade bottle and stored it inside. Oh my God, my celestial eyes are blinded. The young man saw it clearly and immediately cried out in surprise. He said, I say, brother, you're good. You're really good. When did our trade produce a talent like you? I admire you to death. This is something I've dreamed of doing. It's true that we're not in the same trade. I got this thing by chance. Yi Fan felt that it was too dangerous to walk with this man. If he provoked Yao Shi, it would be big trouble. He wanted to get rid of him. I admire you so much. In our trade, we emphasize on getting something by chance. We don't have to do it deliberately. The young man wore an admiring face. This toy. You also emphasize on getting it by chance? Yi Fan was speechless. Normal people can't do such a difficult job, sighed the young man. My grandfather was a hero for his whole life, but he regretted it for the rest of his life. Who are you? Who's your grandfather? What regret? Yi Fan felt that this man's identity wasn't ordinary. My grandfather is Tu Tian, the seventh bandit. He swaggered around the northern region. He could steal anything. His biggest regret was that he couldn't steal a saintess to be his wife. Yi Fan was surprised. The grandson of the seventh bandit did have a big background. I'm Tu Fei. To fulfill one of my grandfather's wishes, I want to steal a saintess to be my wife. Yi Fan didn't know what to say. How could they think of capturing the saintess of the great sage's land to be his wife? The Yao Guang saintess is there. Let's go there and find a chance to capture her. Tu Fei's eyes shot out two beams of light, looking at the horizon. At this moment, shouts and shouts shook the sky. Battles were happening everywhere. Right in front of them, Yao Shi's fairy-like body was like thin clouds covering the bright moon. She was like a pearl in the sea, extremely beautiful. Her long dress fluttered, dancing in the wind as she fought with many bandits. Yi Fan struggled to get rid of her. He felt that if he followed this man, he would have bad luck. As the battles were happening everywhere, it was a good chance for him to leave. Tu Fei soared up into the sky, shouting. Yao Shi, did you lose something? Did the geniuses of our trade get it? Yi Fan staggered, almost falling to the ground. This bastard didn't watch his mouth. He dared to say anything. Wasn't he bringing trouble to him? Chapter 182. Tu Fei, what nonsense are you talking about? Although Yao Guang's saintess was killing the enemies, she was like a graceful fairy butterfly. She was graceful and noble with a graceful beauty. Yao Shi, did you lose a piece of clothing? Is it something precious? Tu Fei hovered in the sky, asking with a serious face. I don't know what you're talking about. Yao Guang's saintess was using her supreme technique. Shortly after, she struck the two old men away. She opened her mouth and spat out a green jade bell. The melodious sound of the bell reverberated in the sky. The cultivators who were attacking her had to cover their ears in pain, screaming pathetically. I'm sure you lost something. How did you lose it? Tu Fei was serious, continuing to ask. Damn you. Yi Fan turned around and left. He could see that this bastard had a big mouth. He dared to talk about anything without any fear. He was even a little bit unrestrained and teasing. I don't want to talk to you. Yao Guang's saintess didn't mind him. The green jade bell she spat out became bigger and bigger. The sound of the bell shook the sky. It was melodious and powerful. Within a radius of 10 zhang, all the weapons attacking Shi Yan were shaken. Then, they rang clearly. Boom! 7 or 8 weapons broke in the sound of the bell, falling from the sky. The sound waves were like sabers that frightened people. Yao Shi, think about it one more time. The big-mouthed Tu Fei said without scruples. The item you threw was woven from the divine silkworm's silk. It's impervious to fire, water, and weapons. You've made it a precious treasure. Do you remember it now? Yao Guang's saintess discolored. At first, she thought that the other was talking nonsense. But now, she remembered the bra. She almost screamed out loud. During the past month, she had used all of her forces to find Yi Fan in the southern area. She hated that she couldn't turn the entire place upside down. However, she couldn't find him. Every time she thought about what happened that day, she felt like she was going crazy. She hated that she couldn't use her elegant, jade-like hands to chop Yi Fan into pieces. Oh my God. My immortal eyes are blind. Tu Fei screamed, his voice sad. What I want to see isn't true. Why did someone else get it first? Yao Guang's saintess really wanted to slap him. She said coldly, ridiculous. I saw your pale expression just now. It must be true. The geniuses in our line of work are too amazing. Why can't I do it? Tu Tian was a bit gloomy. He asked, nothing happened between the two of you, right? You're one of my targets. Die. Yao Guang's saintess was so angry that the roots of her teeth were itching. The jasper bell in front of her quickly enlarged to a diameter of 100 feet. The ringing of the bell shook the sky. One could clearly see a series of green rays being emitted, like a ripple, like a wave, sweeping the surroundings. The surrounding cultivators let out miserable cries, as they had no way of defending themselves. Yao Guang's saint daughter wore a cold face. Her clothes fluttered as she stormed toward Tu Fei. You want to silence me? Tu Fei screamed. Then, he remembered something, raking his eyes around. Genius bro, where are you? Lend me your clothes. Two black lines appeared on the forehead of the Yao Guang saintess. Her murderous intent filled the air as her powerful soul consciousness scanned the surroundings. Hey, genius bro, you're not good. Why did you run away? People in our line of work are loyal to their friends. Why did you run away without telling us? Tu Fei shouted in the sky. You big mouth. Yi Fan had dashed far away, but he could still hear their voices. Since there were battles everywhere, Shi Yan was attacked from time to time. He couldn't leave quickly. I'm going to kill you. The Yao Guang saintess was usually beautiful and charming. She rarely got angry. However, Yi Fan seemed to have some strange magical power. Every time she thought of this young man, she couldn't help but scream. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't steal the clothes. Genius bro did it. If you're angry, hurry and find him. It has nothing to do with me, shouted Tu Fei. The bell rang loudly. The dark green jade bell was extremely mystical. The sound waves it emitted were like waves, clearly visible as they surged in all directions. At this moment, the Yao Guang saintess was peerless in her generation. She stood on the massive jasper bell, her skin like ice and bones like jade. Her face was murderous. Tu Fei ran away. Then, he took out a clay jar. It was gray and dull as if it was dug out from a pile of dirt. However, this clay jar was really powerful. The mouth of the jar was like a black hole with a strong devouring power. The sky around was twisted as if it could take everything in. The Yao Guang saintess discolored. Did the seventh bandit Tu Tian give you this? Don't worry. It's just a replica. My grandfather said that if I can catch a saintess to marry, he will give me that clay jar. Although the clay jar was old, it wasn't damaged. Its power was intimidating. It could even absorb the green sound waves and stop Yao Shi's attack. Saintess Yao Guang's expression changed. She said, this is just a replica, but it already has such power. The real one is indeed a weapon of the extreme path. Just like the legends say, it is made from the flesh and blood of the desolate era's emperors. The so-called extreme weapon was the pinnacle of a weapon. In the eastern wasteland, it was as rare as a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn. From the ancient times until now, one could count the number of such weapons. Only the peerless characters who could suppress an era and rule the eastern wasteland could have the chance to refine such a weapon. It required the entire eastern wasteland's power to refine such a weapon. Since the ancient times, the number of great emperors was limited. The monstrous emperor's holy weapon, the Ji family's ancient mirror, the Yao Guang Holy Land's dragon pattern cauldron, and the clay jar that Tu Tian got by chance were all such extreme weapons. Of course, there was one exception in the eastern wasteland. It was the ancient wasteland tower. It was not made by humans. The extreme weapon was made by ancient great emperors and sacred emperors. Its power was peerless. If one could unleash its true power, it would be unimaginable. The reason why Tu Tian could become one of the 13 bandits was because he had an extreme weapon. Almost no one could kill him. With the extreme weapon on him, it was impossible to break his defense. Regarding this clay jar, there was a legend. Before the Desolate Age, a great emperor used his yuan spirit as the fire, his flesh and blood as the clay, and countless divine materials from the eastern wasteland's legends. He turned his body into a clay jar, leaving behind an extreme weapon for his descendants. It could be said that if one had enough divine power to support this weapon, it would not be a problem for him to move unhindered in the eastern wasteland. Unfortunately, no matter how glorious a clan was, it would still fall. Even the greatest inheritance would be extinguished. After the great emperor of the primordial era had passed away, time had passed, and his descendants had long since faded into obscurity. 300 years ago, Tu Tian found this clay jar in a dried-up ancient river in the northern region. Half of it was buried in the sand, and no one knew how long it had been covered in dust. Unfortunately, the clay jar lacked a lid and was not complete. Otherwise, Tu Tian would be able to move unhindered in the eastern wasteland with this clay jar alone. The imitation clay jar was still intimidating. It was like a bottomless pit that was about to absorb the massive jade bell. Yao Guang's saintess was astounded. She knew that if the real clay jar was here, she would be obliterated without any suspense. Tu Fei, your god power isn't enough. Even if you have the imitation of the great emperor's holy weapon, what can you do? Light bloomed from Yao Guang's saintess glabella. The diamond mark was dazzling. It shot out a jet of divine light, slashing forward. What? Your soul consciousness is so powerful. Tu Fei was startled. He couldn't dodge. However, the clay jar in front of him had saved him. It could swallow everything, including the soul consciousness. That jet of divine light vanished immediately. Yao Guang's saintess discolored. The great emperor from the Desolate Age had used his yuan spirit as the flame and his flesh as a jar. Of course, he could swallow the soul consciousness. Ha! Tu Fei laughed, flying away immediately. His cultivation base wasn't as high as Yao Guang's saintess. If they fought for a long time, he would have to bear a big loss. Where are you going? Yao Guang's saintess didn't want to let him go. Genius bro, where are you? I'm coming to find you. Tu Fei's voice shook the entire origin area. Yi Fan cursed him inwardly. This blabbermouth was too much of a bastard. He had brought trouble to Yi Fan. At this moment, people were shouting and shouting everywhere. Shi Yan was attacked from time to time. He had to struggle to move forward. If Yao Shi found him, it would be a big trouble. Genius bro, what are you afraid of? You even stole Yao Shi's bra. Such excellent skills. You're the hero of our generation. If we join hands, we can capture that woman. Tu Fei was like a loudspeaker, shouting everywhere in the sky. As soon as he finished, the entire origin area quieted down for a while. This news was too frightening. It was unimaginable. Yi Fan wanted to curse him. This man should have his mouth sealed. However, thinking about it carefully, the other could have mistaken him for an expert. Anyway, his physique was special. It was hard for others to see his real cultivation base. It can't be true, right? Yao Guang's saintess is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Someone stole her bra. It's impossible. Some cultivators didn't forget to discuss in the middle of the battle. Yao Guang's saintess bell-like laughter reverberated in the sky. Tu Fei, you can't change the situation with your sharp tongue. I want to see where you can run to. After she said that, all the cultivators understood. They didn't believe Tu Fei anymore. I'm telling the truth. A genius bro did steal Yaoshi's bra. Bro, come out. Two-Face screamed while running away. People in our line of work should be loyal. I want to see how long you can talk nonsense. Yao Guang's saintess gritted her teeth. She really wanted to seal this blabbermouth and find Yifan. Her soul consciousness was raking around, searching carefully. During this process, many bandits stormed toward Yaoshi, and many Yaoguang Holy Lands cultivators attacked Two-Fei. In this chaotic battle, their screams attracted more attention. Genius bro, don't force me to use my best attack. Two-Fei retreated while fighting. You're just 14 or 15 years old. You're pretty, motherf asterisk cur. Yifan couldn't help but curse. He tore a bloody garment from a dead body and wrapped it around his face. It looked like he was bandaging a wound. However, there were people everywhere. Of course, someone noticed him. No way. There's a young man. I just saw him. Over there. Over there. Yifan used the old lunatic's footwork and ran away. The fourth bandit, the seventh bandit, and the Peacock King had brought their best weapons. They were fighting against the Yaoguang Saint Master's team. It was a fierce battle. The sky and earth were about to shatter. Shadows of swords and sabers were everywhere. Blood splashed everywhere. Genius bro, I finally see you. Don't run away. You're the one with the bloody garment. People in our line of work have a photographic memory. Even if you wear Yaoshi's saintess battle dress, I can still recognize you. Two-Fei was like a loudspeaker, his voice shaking the sky as he shouted unceasingly. Swoosh. Many people looked at Yifan. Some Yaoguang disciples chased after him. Many roving bandits gave Yifan a thumbs up. Genius bro, you're good. It's rare to see a character like you in our line of work. You stole the saintess bra. Every generation has its own geniuses. They have been outstanding for hundreds of years. Our line of work has never declined. A group of bearded bandits shouted. Greetings to all of you. Of course, Yifan understood that this group of bastards was trying to provoke the people of the Yaoguang Holy Land. Besides Two-Fei, no one would believe that he had Yaoshi's bra. At this moment, the Yaoguang Saint Master gritted her teeth so hard that she almost broke them. She also saw Yifan. Thinking about everything that happened that day, she wanted to scream. 1 month ago, they were naked. Yifan didn't have any secret about her jade-like body. Now, thinking about it, she felt her face burning up. Yaoshi wanted to storm over there and kill Yifan directly. However, she was afraid that people would misunderstand. It was the same as confirming Two-Fei's nonsense. However, she drove Two-Fei in that direction to get closer to Yifan. She was prepared to kill him if necessary. Two-Fei, you bastard. Don't frame me. Shouted Yifan. He had to use his tongue to stop the Yaoguang Saint Master. Otherwise, he would be in a dangerous situation. Yaoshi Fairy is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Everybody knows that. How could you disrespect her like that? The Yaoguang Saint Master gritted her teeth. She really wanted to fly over and step on Yifan. His words were too harsh to her ears. That day, when they were naked, the other's evil hands had scratched her skin. Thinking about it now, she still had goosebumps all over her body. Now, the other party actually said this and wanted to block her path. It was truly detestable to the extreme. Of course, the Yaoguang Saint Master wasn't an ordinary warrior. She reacted fast. She sneered and said, Two-Fei, I'm here, and you're here to smear my name. You're snakes and rats from the same nest. Today, I will kill you both. She thought that the two of them were just acting. One wanted to expose her, and the other wanted to cover it up. She coldly scolded them for their two-man show. Genius bro, you see? Yaoshi wants to kill you too. Come here quickly. If we work together, we can cut through metal. Take her down. At that time, it won't be just a bra. Two-Fei started to talk again. Many bandits with unkempt beards screamed strangely and joined in the commotion. Yi Fan cursed under his breath. These bastards weren't good people. He shouted, Tu Fei, you're a bandit. Don't talk nonsense. Yao Shi Fairy, I've admired you for a long time. I've never thought of disrespecting you. You're like the bright moon hanging high in my heart. You're the purest existence in this world. Listening to him, the Yaoguang Saint Master really wanted to cut him with her saber. However, she still smiled and said, I don't deserve your admiration. Yi Fan didn't wait for her to say more. He shouted, Tu Fei, you bastard. If you frame me one more time, I will use my weapon to kill you. He emphasized the word, weapon, while looking at the Yaoguang Saint Master. It was a naked threat. If she chased after him, he would have to use his bra to kill her. The Yaoguang Saint Master was smart. Of course, she knew what he meant. She gritted her teeth. She hated Yi Fan a lot, but she still smiled brightly. If so, we should join hands and kill Tu Fei. I'm sorry. My competence is low. I can't help you much. Yi Fan had finally reached the edge of the origin area. Of course, after he was noticed, he was lucky that the bearded bandits had helped him. Otherwise, the cultivators of the Yaoguang Holy Land would have captured him already. Genius brother, people in our line of work must be loyal. Tu Fei saw that he was running for his life and didn't want to help them. He was reluctant and said, you should just use that bra. They were about to leave the battlefield. No matter what, Yi Fan didn't want to get involved. Right in front of them, the Peacock King and the Yaoguang Saint Master were fighting. Their battle had shattered the sky and cracked the earth. The sun and the moon had lost their light. The sky was filled with terrifying energy waves like a vast ocean. 108 worlds were floating. The sky was full of halos. The Yaoguang Saint Master looked like she was going to turn into the Great Path. The Peacock King was like a god crossing the worlds. Although he was just a young man, he was domineering. The 4th and 7th bandits joined hands to take out a clay pot. They trapped the antiques of the Yaoguang Holy Land and wanted to take them all inside. The Peacock King, the Blue Flood Dragon King, and Tu Tian want to play big. Yi Fan was frightened. These people had the guts to attack a powerful holy land. Genius brother, people in our line. The loudspeaker Tu Fei came again. Chapter 183. The so-called holy weapon was the limit of what a weapon could achieve. There were only a few of them in the entire eastern wasteland, and they could be counted. They all came from the hands of ancient holy emperors. How many great emperors had there been since ancient times? Those that were recorded in the ancient books were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. As a result, there were only a few extreme Dao weapons. The earthy gray pot was excessively simple, but it possessed great power. Under the joint power of Green Flood Dragon King and Tu Tian, it devoured heaven and earth, collecting everything. Kacha. In the sky, there was an 8 trigrams furnace that was the size of a small mountain. Flames overflowed into the heavens, blocking in front. However, it couldn't stop the clay pot at all, releasing cracking sounds. Boom! The huge furnace cracked open all of a sudden. Flames filled the sky, wreaking havoc in all directions. Unfortunately, it only fluctuated for a moment before it was all sucked into the clay jar. This was already the 9th weapon of the Supreme Elders that had been destroyed. In the face of extreme Dao weapons, there was nothing they could do but shatter. The earthy gray jar looked ordinary, but it was a saint weapon forged from the flesh and blood of an ancient emperor. Its power was immeasurable. If not for the lack of a seal, the enemy would have been destroyed long ago. Let's see how long you can last. The Green Flood Dragon King shouted. Together with Tu Tian, he activated the jar again. On the other side, an ancient cauldron floated up and down. Streaks of dragon patterns appeared on its surface, its style simple and unadorned. Chaotic mist gathered around it. This was a replica of the dragon pattern cauldron from the Yaoguang Holy Land. It was controlled by an extremely powerful old man, who was trying his best to fight against the earthy jar. However, a replica was still a replica. Even though it had been refined by this great elder for hundreds of years, it was still unable to withstand the saint weapon of an ancient great emperor. With everyone working together, this dragon pattern cauldron replica only lasted for 7 or 8 minutes before it started shaking. The dragon patterns on it all fell off, and its luster dimmed. Gotcha! The dragon pattern imitation cauldron finally couldn't hold on any longer. Cracks appeared on its surface, about to shatter and be devoured by the jar. Old 2, your holy weapon is just too powerful. I am willing to pay any price to exchange it with you. You can take everything I have right now. The Green Flood Dragon King sighed in admiration and spoke like this. In this life, I will rely on it. I will not exchange it with anyone. Tu Tian flatly refused. At that moment, people from the Yaoguang Holy Land all looked pale. Their weapons were all broken, and they couldn't hold on any longer. Extreme weapons were terrifying. Unfortunately, the dragon pattern cauldron of the Yaoguang Holy Land was the most precious treasure of the Holy Land. It could not be taken out easily. Otherwise, they would not be in such a passive position. On the other side, the Peacock King was fighting Sacred Lord Alcade. They passed through the 108 worlds and were on par with each other. The sun and moon lost their radiance, and the world lost its color. The magical powers of the two mighty beings overflowed into the heavens, and with a roar from the distant sky, the mountains on the ground shook until they crumbled. Yi Fan was dazzled. The weapon of the extreme way shocked him. The people of the Yaoguang Holy Land were going to die because of this clay pot. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. The Green Flood Dragon King and the others had the absolute upper hand. If he killed the group of old antiques and was freed up, then Wavering Light Saint Sovereign wouldn't be able to survive. Right now, he could seek refuge with the Peacock King and the others. He would no longer need to flee. Genius bro, in our line of work, we have to be loyal. Tu Fei also flew to the edge, landing by Yi Fan. Yaoguang Saintess didn't chase after them. Everybody could see that the big characters of the Yaoguang Holy Land weren't in a good situation. They were subdued by the holy weapons of the great ancient emperors. Their bodies and souls could be destroyed easily. Although the Yaoguang Holy Land had a profound foundation, it was too late to cross the void. Boom! The sky was shaken. People screamed and beasts roared. The armored horsemen broke the dome of the sky, grumblingly approaching. It seemed like a flood had arrived from the horizon. The murderous aura shot up into the sky. A big flag fluttered in the air, which had a big character, Jiang. The Jiang family of the remote antiquity had arrived. They were one of the rulers of the North region, which was much stronger than the Yaoguang Holy Land in this area. Fellow Taoists of the Yaoguang Holy Land, our Jiang family is here to help. Hundreds of armored horsemen arrived with some big characters in the middle. Their fighting will shot up into the sky like a surging tide. The icy aura sent chills down people's spines. What bad luck! Tu Fei cursed. In the sky, the Peacock King, the Blue Flood Dragon King, and Tu Tian changed their faces. Now, the powerful Jiang family had come to help, which made their plan fail. The Yaoguang Holy Land's cultivators shouted in unison. Until now, many of them had died. They were about to be defeated. Suddenly, a new force came, which cheered them up. Genius bro. Tu Fei turned around and found that Yi Fan had run away a long time ago. In just a blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Tu Fei was a little dumbfounded. He shouted, "Hey, genius bro, people in our line of work shouldn't be so disloyal." Yi Fan didn't dare to linger. He knew his own strength. If he stayed here, he would only be cannon fodder in the battle between the Holy Land and the Great Bandits. This was a group of strong warriors. None of them were weak. Those with a low cultivation base had been killed in the chaotic battle. Blood mist hovered, and the battlefield was very tragic. Boom! Their rears shook violently. The battle had reached its climax. The Blue Flood Dragon King and Tu Tian were determined to kill a group of strong warriors at any cost. The Peacock King's eyes were sharp. His murderous aura shook the entire area. He turned into a 5-colored peacock, tearing the sky and earth apart. Behind them, the entire area was boiling. The sky and the earth seemed to be about to be destroyed. Yi Fan was as fast as lightning. Like a jet of light, he crossed the earth. He used his mysterious footwork to the extreme, disappearing in a blink of an eye. I will come back later. He disappeared into the vast land. He needed to find a place to cultivate and increase his competence. He shouldn't get involved in the battle. The reddish-brown land was boundless. There were no plants or water sources. There was only emptiness and silence. 7 or 8 days had passed. Yi Fan didn't know how many miles he had traveled. Not to mention an oasis, he didn't even see a leaf. Yi Fan let out a long sigh as he left the area. From now on, he would be free to do as he pleased. He would no longer be restricted. The Yaoguang Holy Land was based in the south. Even if the Saintess knew he was in the north, she couldn't send enough people to track him down. The 13 bandits were their biggest trouble. To guard the source mine, they had to spend a lot of energy and couldn't take care of anything else. I need the cultivation method of the Holy Palace's secret territory, Yi Fan said to himself. This was his biggest goal in coming to the north. Now that he had reached the Nirvana realm, time waited for no one. He urgently needed the Jasper Lake Heart technique. Thinking of this, he felt a headache. He felt like he had given himself a huge problem. Dreams were beautiful, but it was difficult to actually put them into action. The most effective method is to kidnap a Jasper Lake goddess from the Holy Palace's secret territory and ask her for her cultivation method. However, the consequences of this would be very serious. He had only learned one of the Ji clan's secret techniques and hadn't cultivated the void ancient scripture, but he had already brought disaster upon himself. If he really kidnapped a Jasper Lake goddess and cultivated their secret techniques, it would be a huge disaster. In the past, there had been people who cultivated the sacred land's ancient scriptures, but in the end, they were either killed or had their sects destroyed. All traces of them were erased. The sacred lands and the clans of the ancients valued their ancient scriptures more than anything else. No matter who learned it, they would use all their power to kill them. I've set a huge problem for myself. Yi Fan rubbed his temples. If he had a choice, he really wouldn't want to take on such a challenge. The Jasper Lake goddess can marry someone, but it's said that the conditions are very strict. He thought of Elder Wu Qingfeng's words. How could the high and mighty Jasper Lake goddess marry a small cultivator like him? Time was tight. It was difficult to find the time to slowly get close to the Jasper Lake goddess. This path was very difficult. Do I really have to be a big devil and steal a Jasper Lake goddess? Yi Fan was really in a difficult position. He didn't want to be an enemy of the Jasper Lake, but he really wanted their heart technique. What conditions do I need to become the son-in-law of the Jasper Lake? Yi Fan's imagination ran wild. Maybe there's still some time to buffer. He thought of Elder Wu Qingfeng's words. Many of the great cultivators of the ancient times only cultivated one secret realm, and they could also cultivate to the extreme. There must be many secrets in the sea of reincarnation that haven't been unearthed. Maybe I can cultivate again and leave enough time to get close to the Jasper Lake goddess. Yi Fan felt that the most important thing now was to improve his strength. He had to think of all possible ways. He didn't want to be a devil unless he had no other choice. After thinking about it carefully, he thought that he had to prepare for 2 things. Either way, he had to have the strength of a devil and be able to defeat the Jasper Lake goddess in the Holy Ji Palace secret realm. Yi Fan didn't want to cultivate in this area. He felt that it was still not far enough, so he continued to run into the distance. Along the way, he would stop and blast open the reddish-brown ground in search of source stones. However, he didn't gain much. He didn't find many source stones along the way, so he didn't grasp the gist of or finding. After more than 10 days, Yi Fan finally found an oasis and saw signs of human life. I've been running with secret arts all along the way. Although I stopped and walked, I'm afraid I've already traveled 70,000 kilometers. I've only seen signs of human life after walking for so long. Such a vast area had long surpassed all the continents on Earth, which made him sigh. Countless years ago, this land was flourishing with vegetation and races. Tyrannical humanoid figures split the sky with their bare hands, and all kinds of temples were erected on the land. What happened that caused the northern region to become a barren land? Yifan didn't stop and continued to run forward. He only stopped on the 20th day and decided to find a place to cultivate. Along the way, he saw oases ranging from several kilometers in radius to thousands of kilometers in radius. They were all over the reddish-brown ground. The people of the northern region were fierce, and he saw many bloody incidents. For the sake of fighting for oases and to occupy source stones, battles broke out from time to time. Yifan didn't enter any of the oases. In the end, he settled down in an empty desert. He cut open a stone mountain and opened up a cave abode, starting to cultivate inside. He took out the pristine jade bottle, and colorful source stones fell before him. They were dazzling and bright, illuminating the cave abode. Preliminary estimates showed that these source stones added up to about 60 kilograms. This was a huge fortune that could increase his strength. Yifan started to cultivate and prepared to break through. The so-called Nirvana realm was a realm of transformation. Legend had it that ancient powerhouses who cultivated the sea of reincarnation alone would undergo a transformation of 9 lifetimes and 9 deaths. In the end, they would break out of the cocoon and become a butterfly, returning to the perfect state. The moment they came out of seclusion, the clouds moved in all directions and strange phenomena shot into the sky. Of course, this was the result of many years of cultivation. Some people even cultivated their entire lives for this. It wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. The cultivation of a single secret realm not only required a powerful mental cultivation method, but also some ancient secret arts to complement it. Yifan didn't know much about them, so it was impossible for him to compare with the ancient powerhouses. In the next 7 days, the cave abode was filled with dense spiritual energy. All kinds of strange scenes appeared in Yifan's sea of reincarnation. Green lotuses trembled, golden seas surged, blue skies weaved with lightning. His transformation began. Chapter 184. In the first 7 days, Yifan's entire body was flowing with colors and his vitality was like the ocean. Inside the sea of reincarnation, there were many strange phenomena and various sounds. This continued for 7 days before the brilliance gradually faded. The entire abode was dim and Yifan's body was no longer lustrous. Like a dead tree, his vitality no longer flowed out. On the 8th day, his body shriveled like a rag compared to the sparkling and translucent body of the past. On the 9th day, his internal organs stopped functioning. Compared to the vigorous vitality in the past, he was lifeless at the moment. On the 10th day, his bones were gray and no longer white and clean. It was as if they were about to decay and could no longer exist. This was the transformation of the Nirvana realm. Upon reaching the Nirvana realm, a cultivator's flesh, internal organs, and bones would wither and then undergo a different kind of rebirth. Blood and bones would be changed 9 times in a row to complete the transformation. However, it was obvious that Yifan's situation was different. He advanced step by step and didn't start the transformation after reaching the peak of the Nirvana realm. His 9 transformations were carried out separately. This was only the first transformation and didn't go through continuous destruction and rebirth. Yifan's entire body seemed to be returning to dust and dust to dust. He was close to decay and his vitality seemed to have reached the end. Until the 11th day, he was like a plant that had experienced the cold winter. He regained his vitality and gushed out a towering vitality. The abode shone brightly and life essence filled the air. The essence and blood in Yifan's body were reborn like a surging river. The sound was so loud that it could be heard from far away. His heart was beating strongly like a drum, thumping loudly. If an ordinary person were to see this, they would definitely be overwhelmed with shock. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were vibrating at the same time, like sonorous music. His bones kept making sounds and the gray faded away. They were as white as jade and clear as crystal. At the same time, they trembled continuously. Although the hidden injuries he suffered in the past, whether it was on his skin, internal organs, or bones, they had long been healed, the rebirth of his body this time was another baptism. His entire body was free of dust and dirt and completely reborn. This transformation lasted for several days before Yi Fan completely woke up. The divine power in his body was surging. This time, it couldn't be considered a complete transformation, but his physique was greatly improved, and his body was much stronger. There are still 8 more chances to metamorphose. If I continue until the end, they should be comparable to a complete rebirth. After consuming the holy fruit twice and refining his body with the monster race Great Emperor's sacred heart blood essence once, he had gone through a total of 3 rebirths. He felt that the combination of the 9 transformations of the Nirvana realm might be equivalent to a rebirth. Yi Fan discovered that he had refined a total of 9 kilograms of origin source. This caused him to be shocked. Such a huge consumption was beyond his expectations. He had originally thought that with so many sources, he would be able to enter the secret realm of the Doctrine Palace through the consummation of the Nirvana realm. If that's the case, even a few dozen kilograms of origin stones won't be able to support me through 9 transformations. I still need to find origin stones. The greater the amount of energy consumed, the more thorough the transformation, the greater the improvement to the constitution. However, this was still quite astonishing, far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators. This is an extravagant squandering. He sighed. If he had not come to the northern region, it would have been difficult to solve this problem. In the following days, Yi Fan cultivated in seclusion and did not go out. He had plenty of food and water in the pristine jade bottle, so there was no need to worry. Time passed quickly, and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Fan had gone through 6 transformations and used up all of his origin stones. The 6 transformations made him even stronger, and at the same time, the sea of reincarnation became different. In the cave abode, Yi Fan did not move. Lightning coiled around him, and a green lotus accompanied him. There was a blue sky above his head as he sat in the golden sea. This was not a true vision, but a further evolution of the sea of reincarnation. It broke through the shackles of the flesh shell and truly appeared. That green lotus was like the birth of the Tao. It still only had 3 leaves, but it was like the 3 gave birth to all things. It gently swayed, and a chaotic mist shrouded Yi Fan. That blue sky was bright and clear like a gemstone. There were lightning dragons swimming below, interweaving with endless lightning radiance. It was as if the tribulation lightning of creation had appeared here. The golden sea rose and fell, but Yi Fan was like a boulder, not moving at all. He allowed the tides to rise and fall, surging around him. This was a strange scene. At first, the waves and lightning were deafening, but then everything calmed down, becoming a peaceful and harmonious scene. It wasn't a vision, but it was comparable to a vision. It surrounded him, making him feel as if he was standing in a strange world. At this moment, Yi Fan was without ripples and waves, becoming one with the pulse of heaven and earth. There was a strange power contained within the tranquility. Only after a long time had passed did he open his eyes. The green lotus, blue sky, lightning, golden sea, and others were all restrained, disappearing without a trace. Yi Fan's current situation was that he had no choice but to search for origin stones. His body was like a bottomless pit, no amount of origin stones was enough. At this point, he was very envious of the disciples of the Holy Land. They had the most powerful ancient scriptures and endless heavenly treasures. They only needed to cultivate diligently. And he not only had to think of a way to obtain a cultivation method, but he also had to dig for origin stones himself. For a secret art, he was chased all the way to the northern region. It was a narrow escape. Rumble. Yi Fan used the golden book to split the earth in search of the origin veins. He almost turned the entire region upside down. There were large cracks everywhere, and there were shattered rocks everywhere. Only on the 4th day did he finally find a stone vein. It was the kind of rock that contained origin stones. However, after completely excavating it, he was greatly disappointed. He had only collected less than half a kilogram of origin stones, which was too low. Half a month later, Yi Fan had collected more than half a kilogram of origin stones. This made him completely understand that the origin region controlled by the Holy Land was the best region. Comparatively speaking, the other regions were very barren. This couldn't go on like this. He had to think of another way. When Yi Fan returned to his residence, the Stone Mountain Cave residence, he suddenly found a group of people. There were about a dozen of them, including an old man. The rest were all young and strong. They were surrounding the stone mountain and observing. Sigh, Big Beard Chen is too arrogant. He's really too much. If we can't hand over 5 kilograms of origin stones, he'll kill all the people in our village. There's no other way. The strongest person in our village is only at the Life Spring realm. How can we fight against them? They're a group of powerful bandits. The deadline is very close. If we still can't find the origin stones, our village will really be in danger. Zhang Wuya, you've circled around the stone mountain. Is there an origin stone here? A very simple and honest young man asked. There must be an origin stone in this stone mountain, and it's definitely a rich mine. Unfortunately, this is a 300-meter tall stone mountain. It's not easy to mine with our strength. The white-haired Zhang Wuye sighed. Yi Fan had lived here for more than 2 months. He didn't know that there was an origin stone near him. The other party had circled around the mountain and confirmed it. This made his heart skip a beat. Let's go and take a look elsewhere. Zhang Wuye sighed. We've been collecting origin stones for years. The places that can be mined have all been mined. It looks like we'll have to go to a further place. I don't know if we can make it in time. The dozen or so people turned their horses around and headed into the distance. Not long after, Yi Fan flew out and stood on the stone mountain. He took out the golden book and slashed horizontally. Rocks flew everywhere. Very soon, he had shaved off more than 10 meters of the mountain peak. He actually saw an origin stone. He started to dig and dug out 1 kilogram of origin stone. It was indeed a rich mine in this area. That old man's eyes are as sharp as lightning. He's really accurate. Yi Fan was a little surprised. The sound of hooves could be heard. Zhang Wuye and the dozen or so young men had returned. They had heard the commotion behind them and had returned. Everyone was very surprised to see the top of the stone mountain being shaved off and a 14 or 15-year-old youth standing on it. This little brother, no, this little immortal, this old man greets you. The white-haired Zhang Wuye jumped off his horse and bowed. When the other young men saw this, they also got off their horses and bowed. Sir, you don't have to do this, Yi Fan replied from above. Among the dozen or so people, there was a 17 or 18-year-old man who was the quickest. When he saw Zhang Wuye like this, he immediately understood something. He hurriedly knelt down and said, "Little immortal, save us. Please help us. There's really no way out." The others also came to their senses and knelt down one after another. Big Beard Chen wants to kill everyone in our village. Little immortal, save us. A youth named Air Bo kowtowed so hard that his forehead was bleeding. He said, "Little brother, save us. My sister has been captured by them. She definitely won't have a good ending. Now, for the sake of Origin Stone, they want to kill everyone in our village." He wept bitterly. Zhang Wuye also knelt down. His shining white head touched the ground and sighed. "Little immortal, save us. We really don't have a way out. There's no way to gather 5 kilograms of origin stone in a short time. Those bastards threaten to kill all the men in our village and take the women away if we can't gather enough." Yi Fan didn't want to cause any trouble, but he couldn't bear to see the weak being bullied and humiliated. This was his nature, so he couldn't leave indifferently. "Elder, please get up." He landed on the ground and helped the old man whose forehead was bleeding up. He asked, "What kind of people are they?" "A group of roving bandits who do all kinds of evil. They don't have the strength of character of the 13 great bandits. They only bully the weak. There are actually many such bandits, but villains like them are rare. The group of people talked at once and explained the ins and outs of the matter clearly. This group of bandits didn't have a fixed residence. They robbed Origin Stone everywhere, killed people at every turn, bullied young girls, and committed all kinds of evil. According to their description, there were divine bridge realm cultivators among these bandits. Even though there were cultivators in the village, they couldn't fight against them. Yi Fan's thoughts turned. This group of bandits plundered everywhere, so they definitely had Origin Stone in their hands. He could become a great thief who specialized in robbing these bandits. Elder, let me ask you. Are there many bandits like this? There are many, like locusts. One batch leaves, and another batch comes. Every place in the North region is the same. It's very chaotic. Zhang Wuye shook his head. This was also the reason why there were cultivators in a village. Without martial power to protect it, the situation would be worrisome. Yi Fan's eyes brightened. He felt that the problem at hand was completely solved. He nodded and said, Zhang Wuye, I'll go back with you. Thank you, little immortal. These people were incomparably excited and bowed again. There's no need to do this. You don't have to do this. Yi Fan hurriedly stopped them. On the way, Yi Fan consulted Zhang Wuye, asking him how he could see that there was an Origin Stone in the mountain. That stone mountain has a heavy aura. There are scales at the top and stone vines twining around the waist of the mountain. In addition, Zhang Wuye said a bunch of things before finally saying, on the surface, this is a stone Origin Stone. Yi Fan was dumbfounded. Searching for the Origin Stone was actually so complicated. According to the old man, even the change in color of the ground when the sun, moon, and stars moved had to be taken into account. So complicated. Yi Fan was very surprised. This is only the simplest method. Zhang Wuye shook his head and said, searching for the Origin Stone is indeed incomparably profound. One needs to observe the landscape of the mountains and rivers, understand the movement of the underground veins, and sometimes correspond with the stars in the sky. Yi Fan couldn't help but be surprised. Searching for the Origin Stone actually had so many principles. It was simply broad and profound. Is what you said true? Of course it's true. Zhang Wuye is the most famous Origin Stone in our area. Zhang Wuye is very accurate in looking for the Origin Stone. He rarely makes mistakes. Zhang Wuye shook his head and said, I've only learned the surface of the things passed down by my ancestors. This knowledge is about to be completely lost. Zhang Wuye's ancestor was the Yuan Taoist master. He was able to find the dragon vein of the origin and fix the exceptional divine source in place, preventing it from escaping, Dumbo said from the side. The Yuan Taoist master, the exceptional divine source can escape. Yi Fan was very surprised. The divine source is alive. It is nurtured in the dragon vein of the origin. Even if the people of the world discover it by chance, it's difficult to catch it, a middle-aged man at the side added. Zhang Wuye shook his head and said, according to my ancestors' words, it's not the divine source that has life, but the creatures sealed within it still have life. What? Yi Fan was even more shocked. A mortal actually understood the divine source so well. According to my ancestors' conjecture, those creatures are extremely tyrannical. Even the current powerful cultivators are probably not their match. Zhang Wuye had nothing to hide when talking about the past. He said, my ancestor once saw an ancient person walk out of the exceptional divine source with his own eyes. With a mournful howl, a mountain ridge collapsed. Yi Fan's heart trembled as his imagination ran wild. The northern region was really too mysterious. There were too many past events in this land. Although all life on the surface had been extinguished, the past events underground were not finished and had been sealed away. How much did your ancestor know about ancient creatures? Yi Fan asked. Not much. Zhang Wuye shook his head and said, according to the words left behind by my ancestor, those mysterious creatures are taboo existences in the northern region. It's best not to keep mentioning them, or bad things will easily happen. Your ancestor is the Yuan Taoist master, and his identity seems to be extraordinary. You actually know these secrets. The Yuan Taoist Master is a title. In the distant past of the northern region, there were not many people with that title. Now, there are no such people anymore. The middle-aged man at the side seemed to be a little emotional. Hiss. Yi Fan sucked in a breath of cold air. He did not know much about the northern region. It seemed that the Yuan Taoist master had a great background and was probably not as simple as a mortal. In the northern region, there's a place called the Jade Lake. They all respectfully invited Zhang Guiye's ancestor to be a guest there. Dumbo interrupted. What? Yi Fan was shocked. To attend a banquet at the Jade Lake Holy Land, it seemed that the Yuan Taoist master was definitely an extraordinary person. It was unimaginable that he could search for the dragon vein and stabilize the divine source. Did the people from the Jade Lake come to your village after that? Yi Fan asked. They came once 500 years ago. Unfortunately, the Book of Source of Heaven had been lost for thousands of years. Later generations only learned the surface and couldn't help them much. Zhang Guiye shook his head. Yi Fan felt that the Yuan Taoist master was extraordinary and difficult to fathom, so he asked, I think your ancestor must be an extraordinary person. Did he later come to this village to enjoy his old age? Sigh. Zhang Guiye sighed and said, the Yuan Taoist master knows too much about the secret of the source. Bad things will definitely happen. Chapter 185. The matters of the ancient past passed with the passage of time, and the dust of history was buried beneath the earth. This was the truest portrayal of the northern region. As the years went by, the once vibrant earth became desolate, and the races of the past had become the smoke of history. Now, there was only endless emptiness and desolation left in the northern region. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing in the boundless earth, only a drab reddish-brown. Zhang Guiye's village was 200 li away. At this speed, they would be able to rush back before sunset. Yi Fan was also riding a horse beside Zhang Guiye, earnestly asking him about all kinds of secrets regarding the origin. 1,000 years ago, the heavenly Book of Source had been lost, and many secret methods to search for the origin were lost. Zhang Guiye was very regretful, and he would sigh whenever he talked about this matter. Yi Fan was also somewhat disappointed. That was definitely a wondrous book, and he really wanted to take a look at it. Searching for the origin of the dragon vein and determining the peerless divine source, such methods were universally shocking. Once he grasped it, he would definitely become an honored guest of the Holy Land. This wondrous book possessed inestimable value. The galloping horses left behind a dozen or so trails of smoke and dust. After more than 2 hours, the horses' speed became slower and slower. They had only galloped for 70 to 80 li, and they were not fine steeds with ordinary stamina. Hiya! Suddenly, 7 or 8 horses appeared on the horizon. Their speed was extremely fast, like a whirlwind, stirring up smoke and dust into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived before them. These people's mounts were not ordinary horses. All of them were tall and sturdy with shining scales. These were dragon-scaled horses. Their bodies were covered in green scales, and they could travel 4,000 to 5,000 li in a day without tiredness. Not good, they're roving bandits. The expression of the quick-witted youth named Wang Shu changed. All of you, stop. A dark-skinned middle-aged man shouted. The 8-hide dragon-scale horses surrounded them, blocking Yi Fan and the others. The people on the horses shouted, hand over the source capital you've excavated, or this will be your burial ground. Yi Fan had finally experienced the complexity of this chaotic land. In broad daylight, roving bandits ran amok, and people were killed and robbed at the slightest provocation. Sir, we didn't collect a single source grain today. We didn't gain anything, Wang Shu explained with a smile. Cut the crap. Source gatherers like you won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. Hurry up and hand it over, and we'll let you leave. Otherwise, this day next year will be the day of your death, the dark-skinned, middle-aged man in the center scolded. Sir, we really didn't find anything. If you don't believe me, you can search us all you want. We won't resist. Zhang Guye cupped his hands. Yi Fan patted Zhang Guye's shoulder, telling him not to worry as he sized up these people. Old thing, stay on the side. A bandit walked up, staring at Yi Fan, feeling that his body seemed to have an origin aura. You still say you don't have any source? This young man with soft skin and tender flesh must have a lot of source on him. A bandit brandished his horsewhip, lashing it heavily at Yi Fan, cursing, you still dare lie in front of us? Bang! Yi Fan gripped the horsewhip and said to Zhang Guye and the others, you guys go ahead and wait for me. Little brat, who do you think you are? A mere source gatherer dares to act like this? The bandit swept his gaze around and said, let's see who dares to leave. All of you, obediently wait here for me. Plop. Yi Fan pulled him off the dragon's scale horse, but he didn't take his life. He had a lot of questions to ask these bandits. Zhang Guye and the others saw this and rushed into the distance without stopping. The bandit leader, who plundered all day long, naturally saw that something was wrong. He directly abandoned the dragon's scale horse and soared into the sky, wanting to escape. Still want to leave? Yi Fan flicked his fingers, and 8 gusts of wind, like 8 hammers, smashed into their bodies. The 8 of them immediately fell to the ground. The bandit leader was only a life spring realm cultivator, so he couldn't withstand a single blow from Yi Fan. These people all paled, knowing that they had kicked an iron plate. Are you really bandits or not? The source chi on you doesn't even add up to half a caddy. Yi Fan was quite dissatisfied. Tell me in detail what groups of bandits there are in the vicinity. Half a quarter of an hour later, Yi Fan led the 8 dragon scale horses and caught up with Zhang Guye's group. Will bringing these dragon scale horses back cause you trouble? The dozen or so young men were very envious, but Zhang Guye shook his head and said, let them run their own course. Only bandits can ride them. If we have these strange beasts in our village, they'll be too conspicuous. Bandits run amok. Do the sex here not care? Yi Fan asked. How can they care? The bandits are like locusts. One batch leaves, another batch comes. There's no way to control them. It's about as long as they don't join in. I've heard that many sects support the bandits and secretly plunder. Yi Fan further understood the chaos and bloodshed in the northern region. This was simply a paradise for evil. No wonder cultivators from other regions want to adventure in the northern region. This place is lawless. As long as you have the strength, you can be a local tyrant. Yi Fan felt that this was very suitable for him. He didn't need to worry about source chi. Before sunset, they finally covered more than 200 kilometers. In front of them, there was a stockade made of stones. There were only a few dozen households, and all of them added up to no more than 200 people. When they approached, Yi Fan found that the folk customs were indeed tough. All the villagers, regardless of gender or age, were holding sharp knives. When they saw that it was Zhang Guye and the others who had returned, they heaved a sigh of relief and put down their sharp knives. Big Beard Shen is here again. He said that there are only 5 days left. If we don't hand over the source chi, he'll destroy our entire stockade. The villagers frowned and sighed in despair. The other teams that went out also didn't gain anything and returned without accomplishing anything. We've harvested too much source chi these years. The source chi in the nearby area has dried up. How can we harvest it in a short time? Yi Fan settled down. There were many stone houses in the northern region, but his residence was clean and meticulously tidied up. That night, Zhang Guye and the others warmly entertained him. They specially slaughtered a sheep, and everyone sat around the fire. The whole sheep was roasted to a golden and glossy color. After it was taken down from the fire rack, everyone ate large pieces of meat and drank large bowls of wine. Most of the men in the northern region were boorish and even had the air of bandits. Drinking was inevitable. Yi Fan ate to his heart's content. He had been constantly on the run these days, and this kind of feeling made him very relaxed. During the feast, he asked Zhang Guye about a few places and directions. Zhang Guye had someone bring over a cowhide map and pointed it out to him one by one. They were all within a radius of 50 kilometers. These were the strongholds he had learned from the mouths of several bandits. Now, Yi Fan urgently needed source qi to increase his strength. On that very night, he took action and successively raided 3 strongholds of the bandits. In the end, he was greatly disappointed. There were no more than a dozen bandits in each lair, and he only found a little more than 1 kilogram of source qi in 3 places. It's not enough for me. I need to find a great bandit to start with. Up until now, Yi Fan missed the source region of the Yaoguang Holy Land immensely. That place was truly a land of treasures. The areas outside were extremely barren and simply couldn't be compared to that place. This stone stronghold was located in an oasis with a radius of more than 10 kilometers. On the horizon was a lonely mountain that was thousands of meters high. There was no soil or vegetation. It was completely a stone mountain. Early in the morning, the sun shone down on the huge stone mountain, giving off an incomparably solemn feeling. When Yi Fan walked out of the stone house, he just happened to see Zhang Wuye facing the morning glow and kowtowing to the mountain. This made him feel rather strange. The youth called Dumbo explained in a simple and honest manner, the first thing Zhang Wuye does when he gets up every day is to kowtow to that mountain. Yi Fan's heart was moved. That mountain most likely wasn't simple. There might be some hidden secrets. At this time, Zhang Wuye walked over. He didn't explain anything and only called him over to eat breakfast. Dumbo, let me ask you. What's so strange about that mountain? Yi Fan asked when there was no one else around. I don't know. Zhang Wuye doesn't let us go near it. He says that it's an ominous place. Dumbo shook his head. After breakfast, Yi Fan strode forward like a wisp of smoke. Before long, he had arrived in front of the mountain. Its entire body was purplish-brown, as if it was polished from dark purplish gold. It was thick and heavy, reaching a height of 4,000 meters. It was extremely steep and impossible for mortals to climb it. Yi Fan was amazed to find that there were many knife marks and sword holes on its surface. They had almost been eroded and obliterated by the wind. Only by careful observation could he see them clearly. He tried to scratch a finger on the stone wall and found that it was extremely hard, comparable to refined iron. This kind of purple rock was very special. Yi Fan immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Such a hard mountain had already been eroded to this state. Just when were the knife and axe marks left on its surface? Immeasurable. He slowly rose into the air and became more and more surprised. Not only were there knife marks on the stone wall at the foot of the mountain, but there were also knife marks all over the mountain, up to the mountainside. When he reached the mountainside, the purple mountain stood up and down like a giant sword piercing into the sky. It was a majestic sight. Yi Fan was shocked to find that other than the marks left by various kinds of weapons, there were also many palm prints and finger holes. They were almost eroded and blurry, but still vaguely discernible. These must be the marks left by the primordial era. Otherwise, such a hard purple rock would not have nearly obliterated the marks. After flying to the mountaintop, Yi Fan looked into the distance and found that there was a mountain ridge in every direction. There are 9 mountain ridges in total. They are extremely far away on the horizon and are barely visible. This purple mountain seems to be in the center. Yi Fan did not know much about mountains and rivers, so he could not find anything special about it. In the end, he only stared at this purple mountain. The top of the mountain was bare and there was nothing. The morning sun shone down, making the whole mountain look even more majestic. There's nothing special about it. Could there be an origin inside? Yi Fan took out the golden book and slashed at the open mountaintop. The purple mountain was extremely hard, especially the mountaintop. However, it was still cut open by the golden book. Sparks flew in all directions and rocks pierced through the air. Not long after, a large hole appeared on the mountaintop. Yi Fan frowned. He did not find anything out of the ordinary. This was not the kind of stone used to contain an origin, so it should not contain an origin. In the end, he returned to the stone stronghold without accomplishing anything. The next day, he woke up early and watched from afar. Sure enough, the first thing Zhang Wuye did after leaving the house was to worship the mountain. During breakfast, he could not help but ask, "Old master, is that mountain very special? Why do you worship it every day?" Zhang Wuye's expression froze. He then sighed and said, "That is an ominous place. You must not go there. My ancestor once said that no one in the entire northern region can provoke it." Provoke? Yi Fan was even more shocked. He asked, "What exactly is there on that purple mountain?" "I don't know what it is either. I only know that it is an ominous place." Yi Fan did not get anything out of him. He wandered around the stronghold and then found Dumbo. He asked him again, but he could not tell him anything either. The quick-witted young man, Wang Shu, happened to pass by. He had a good impression of Yi Fan and knew that he stayed behind to help the village. He said, "I know a little." Zhang Wuye once cried bitterly when he was drunk. He said that it was an ominous place and that it had something to do with some ancient great emperor. Yi Fan was shocked at that time. How many great emperors had appeared in the entire Eastern Baron since ancient times? Just a few of them, but they ruled over the world and shocked the ancients and contemporaries. Almost no one could surpass their achievements. The terrifying supreme weapons of the Eastern Baron were all made by those few people. No one else could refine them. At this moment, Yi Fan felt his blood boiling and almost shouted. Something to do with ancient great emperors? He immediately thought of many things.